I'd like to welcome everyone to the Mapua Master Plan hearing and ask Councillor Mackenzie to open with karakia.
Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia tātou te tangata, kei te kaupapa o te huanei, kei te kaupapa o te rangi nei, moriora ki a tātou katoa, bind above, bind below, bind within, bind beyond, bind us the people to the purpose of our meeting, to the purpose of this day, breathe life into all of us.
Thank you for that. I'll just go through the housekeeping because we've got a few visitors today and we'll have visitors coming in and out. So we have people on Zoom. Councillor Hill is on Zoom, and I see the Mapua District Community Association Chair is also on Zoom, and the Mayor is going to be on Zoom at different times, but he's also an apology for lateness later. Please turn your microphones on when you're speaking, but keep them muted otherwise. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's YouTube channel. Zoom members, if you turn off your camera and your microphone during breaks, and your Zoom will obviously work better without the camera being on. The location of the toilets is just outside to your left. And then you go out the front door if we get a fire alarm, and we had a practice alarm this morning, so it does happen sometimes. If we get an earthquake, drop underneath and hold on. The media are in the room and may also be on Zoom later, and hearing assistance is available in the public seating area at the rear. So I've got one apology for lateness from the Mayor. Are there any other apologies? No. Would someone like to move the apologies be accepted? Councillor Dowler, seconded Deputy Mayor Bryan. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Reports, Anna, we've just got one report, so if you just, and we've got one resolution. Have you got anything you wish to say in relation to your report?
No, I'll just take it as read. Thanks.
So the report is that we received the Mapua Master Plan submissions, and we accept and consider all submissions received on the draft master plan. So that's up on the board up from the 1st of November to the 16th of February. And then we also had some late submissions that we received from Ridgeview Developments, from Trevor Marshall on behalf of the Mapua boat ramp, and also from Jesse Loader on behalf of the Tamaha Sea Scouts. And we declined to accept the late submissions that were received after the 21st of February. Would someone like to move? Moved. Councillor Ellis. Seconded. Councillor Kininmonth. Any discussion? Councillor Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the Chair. What were the late submissions after the 21st of February? Were there none?
Anna?
That's correct. There were not none.
None. So it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay. So now we've got a schedule of submitters. Our first ones, they get 5 minutes. If you're representing an organisation, you get 10. So we've got some submitters 5 minutes, some 10, and some of them have got presentations. So the first one is Mike Emanuel, and you've got 5 minutes. So at 4 minutes, we'll give you a bell, and how you use the 5 minutes is up to you. If you leave some time at the end for some questions, that will be useful, but it's entirely up to you. So I've got a stopwatch, and Councillor Butler is going to look after it for me. So Mike, we'll push the button and over you, and you can assume your submission has been read.
Okay, well, I'd like to start by saying that the form that was sent out to the public is extremely that's subjective, and it's not fair to ask the public what I should be doing with my property. So there's two parts on that that I totally disagree with. One is the changing of the zoning. We bought the property as rural residential. We only ever plan on using it as residential, so we expect it to stay as residential, whether that's rural residential or residential, that's all it ever should be. We're never planning on being a business. The other thing that we need to talk about is we want to widen the road for a cycleway and a walkway. Well, we don't want that going through our property at all. There's a far better place to put the walkway and cycleway where it will end up in quiet spots, easy to develop. And this has never been talked about. To widen the road, we have to chop into some trees, which, according to Forest and Bird, have significant rare earth and not being touched at all. Yeah.
We'll just see if any of the councillors have any questions at this point. Councillor Kininmonth.
Thank you, Mr. Emanuel. Can you remind me what your address is, please?
Satherley Road.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Well, that's quite clear.
Yep. So, yep, we don't want any developments on our property.
All right. Got that clear message?
Yep.
And I think I've got it from reading your submission as well.
Yep. That's the way it'll always be. No developments on our property.
Okay. Oh, that's clear. You're well under time, so that's very good. All right. So no other questions. So we'll move on to the next person. Thank you for coming in. All right. The next one we've got is Gary Clark. I don't see Gary Clark here. And I understand also his wife Lynette. He's on Zoom now.
Hopefully,
so
you can hear
if
me.
you like to come up to the microphone, and Gary, I'm told you're away out of the country. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm in Australia for road safety stuff and family stuff.
Okay, so again, 5 minutes. How you do it is up to you. And I think there is also a PowerPoint presentation, so we'll just wait till we get that up.
While that's coming up, I'll just do a quick introduction, if you like. We're the owners of 6 Seaton Valley Road and 175 Mapua Drive. I like what council's doing with the structure plan and generally across the district, and recognising that if we want to go forward and through generations, we need to build on unproductive land, develop unproductive land, and not allow things like happen with berry fields where we have built a whole bunch of houses on very productive land. So council's targeting the right areas to allow growth to happen without affecting, you know, our food sources in the future. Now, I can't tell if you've got the PowerPoint presentation up or not.
The screen is up.
Oh, cool. Thank you. So I'll work through these pretty quickly because I'm sure you might want to ask some questions. The first, I don't know how, if you can turn the next page. In terms of that introduction statement, we think Mapua is an ideal place to have growth because of the amount of unproductive land in there. Under the structure plan or any future plan change, there needs to be some design guidelines to make sure we keep the coastal theme of Mapua and its village type atmosphere. There's a need to provide for, you know, your standard lots and also smaller lots or more dense, medium density stuff. But if that's done, it shouldn't all be lumped in one location. It should be spread over the development area to allow that to not dominate one location. And one key thing, which I think you'll probably get from a few submitters, is it needs to be walkable cycle connections and the like through the existing ones that exist, and making new ones along Seaton Valley Stream and up through the senior land of the Seaton Valley development area, which you do know there's a fast track process in place. Next slide, thanks. The concern that we've had with regards to the the structure plan is, and particularly around the commercial stuff, is you've got commercial ports saying there's enough land for this activity in the future. Our experience from what we've seen with businesses wanting to move or relocate or even expand in Mapua is that does not exist. The existing commercial land doesn't have the shape or size to meet some of the needs of Mapua in the future. And some of the land that's been zoned as commercial is existing commercial land, which will be problematic under climate change because they'll need to be, the buildings on those properties will need to be demolished and the ground level raised to meet the future. And then that creates flow-on effects in terms of how you integrate that with existing infrastructure, including roads and so forth. It's effectively brownfield development trying to meet future climate change, which will be problematic because, and a good example of that is out in Golden Bay, where you've got a supermarket that sits above climate change, but the rest of the land sits quite below, and they've had to spend quite a lot of money to bring that up. If you do that to the Foursquare in Mapua, that's extremely difficult without building retaining walls around the whole site. And the existing areas that are in Mapua won't be central to the future Mapua because the future Mapua is sort of heading towards Seton Valley. Next slide, thanks. With regards to our land, it was included in the draft plan. The council has removed this zone as a result of a number of things from what I understand. One was related to inundation. The other one was related to the commercial aspect, which I've already talked about. With regards to the flood modelling, my understanding the flood modelling for the Mapua area was done what's called a bathtub model. We have done
4 minutes, Gary.
Oh, thank you. Was that 4, was it? And the modelling that we've done shows that we can build the land up and meet that future sea level rise. And the land can be designed around that with future buildings being shaped around that with parking areas below that. Our land is well shaped in terms of size. It's centrally located and it has 2 frontages. And it's easily linked to transport modes because of its location in terms of the road network. Next slide, thanks. It's large enough for parking, large format or areas for a superette, which needs a minimum of 4,000 square metres to actually work. We've had interest from 2 of the main providers about having a superette, not a supermarket, a superette, 800 square metre building. Large enough for other activities that need larger blocks. Existing commercial areas have already been developed and too expensive and too small for the future needs. We also plan to have a future walkway through our site that will connect Drewery Park to Seton Valley. Our land can be made resilient for climate change with relative ease compared to existing commercial areas. And also our land can be designed to allow future stormwater connections to proposed wetland and Seton Valley stream. Next slide, please.
You're over time, Gary.
Oh, okay. Well, you've got the rest of the things, but just picking up on the previous submitter, 20 and 12 are not appropriate for commercial development because it's significant trees and visual dominance, and it's also very difficult because it's got difficult terrain. And I'll stop there and have any questions you may have, and I welcome you to read the rest of the PowerPoint.
No, well, we don't have time for questions now.
Okay.
Everybody's read your submission, so we've got a good handle on what you want. So thank you very much for your time and for your wife for coming in.
Thank you. Just
and I hope you're enjoying Australia.
Well, unfortunately not, because it was my brother's 60th yesterday and I had to take him to hospital. But just for the councillors, please read the last page of our PowerPoint. That just gives us what we want as an outcome.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm sure they'll do that. Thank you very much. Clare, Kininmonth? There's no time.
Thank you, Chair. I just, do we have Mr. Clark's PowerPoint in our papers? So could we be provided with the PowerPoint, please?
We will make sure that it's available to all members before the end of today. Clare, would you like to come up to the table? On my reading, I didn't see the PowerPoint presentations. Clare, over to you. You've heard 5 minutes. How you use it is up to you.
Thank you. The 2 areas that I would like to comment on. Generally, I support the submission, the plan. My concerns are 49 Seton Valley Road. We're all concerned about climate change, and I find it unconscionable that council can consider a development such as this. Major site works and recontouring of the hillside to provide level building sites will be massive. The chance of major ecological damage in a storm event to Seton Valley Stream and onto the Waimea estuary cannot be understated or overlooked. I know much of the land in the proposed development is medium to standard density. That's 200 to 300 square metre and 450 square metre sections respectively. I ask you to consider this the residential section of the property you live in, and if you don't know, please find out. Then look at how many of the above size sections will fit into your residential property. Hopefully by doing this, it will be a better understanding for you of this proposal. These sections might be considered the new norm on flat greenfields development, but to translate that into any hillside property can only be achieved by massive recontouring of the land. Check on the Mapua Drive and Mount Hope subdivision, section sizes are considerably more than the above. I support infill housing and indeed smaller size sections, especially where they are part of a well-planned development that has sections of differing sizes to accommodate the many different needs of a healthy mixed community. I do have concerns with such a proposal on a hillside and in a major water catchment valley. And I don't support the council having to purchase a retention pond. That should be the developer's cost and responsibility. My other issue is waterfront and Kite Park. I question why the council, as an owner of land, is proposing to extend the land available for commercial to include 23 and 25 Aranui Road. Currently, there is a 2,630 square metre site on the corner of Iwa and Aranui that has sat vacant for 20 years. 2 restaurants on the wharf, albeit in one ownership, pick and choose what day they will open. Other shops limp through winter, and the Sunday market only operates in the peak period, and even then really full. That should send a signal that tourism-based operations are at their peak at the wharf. Private ownership will take up the slack for many years to come. The question then is what is going to operate out of the newly proposed zone land, together with the adjoining strip in Kite Park and that in the waterfront park that has been retained as commercial. To put this area into some perspective, this 4,685 square metres owned by the council is slightly more than the 4 square and mall sites combined. It will result in over 1.4 hectare of commercially zoned land at Port Mapua area. The master plan purports to support commercial development in Mapua Drive, Seton Valley. I quote from page 4. The master plan includes commercial land opportunities adjoining Mapua Drive, Hicks Road and Seton Valley Road, close to new residential development, transport connections and open spaces. Is the council retaining and intending to add the commercial component to the wharf for commercial gain, or is it good long-term planning principles? I suggest the council just would serve residents of Mapua better by rezoning all the commercial land existing and proposed into open space under the partial review of the Muta Waimea management plan. It would provide valuable open space for generations to enjoy and deal with the daily traffic issues of parking at Port Mapua.
Thank you, Claire. So we've got time for some questions. If anybody has any questions. Quite clear. Thank you, Claire, and thank you for coming in. Now we've got Vincent Revell as an individual. I think your first one's as an individual, and then Vincent and Timo are after, and that's as a team. So coming as an individual now, or as part of the... We'll think about that. Because as a group, you get 10 minutes. So I know, but so we've got a set of rules that applies to everybody. If we give you a different option, then we're setting a precedent. So you get 5 minutes, and then as a group, you get 10, because otherwise others will complain. So we're going to start now.
Actually, I just think, can I then just because we're only going to talk for 10 minutes.
All right.
So we'll just
All right.
skip me. Let's just talk in now. And we won't have time for questions.
But you can understand, everybody's had a set of rules. Somebody asked for a lot more time, and he was an individual, so he
That's
gets
fine.
5 minutes.
So we'll skip my
can get
personal submission.
10 together.
Go. All right. So Nelson Tasman 2050 is the think tank of built environment professionals who advocate for better urban design and planning outcomes for the Nelson Tasman region. There's many aspects that we could cover, but in the interest of time, we'll stick to focusing on intensification as a key strategy for vibrant and sustainable communities while preserving rural land. We appreciate that TDC is engaging in this master plan exercise, but we feel it does not go far enough regarding intensification. So we want to begin by just giving some context to the history of urban environments. Throughout history, urban environments have evolved around the concept of a 30-minute commute. This is known as Marchetti's constant. When it comes to commuting, it is time, not distance, that is important. Historically, a commute happened on foot, so 30 minutes didn't take you very far. Hence the compact type development you see typical in many European cities, which are much older and developed in the area of walking. Since the 1950s, however, the private car has dominated the commute and takes you much further in 30 minutes. Towns and cities in New Zealand have had most of their growth since this point. Does this work? Next slide.
So that now takes us to the question of whether Mapua is actually the right place to provide for all this residential growth. And it might not come to as any surprise to you that we still uphold that it's not. It currently has an employment deficit, and the distance from employment centres basically means it just becomes a far-flung commuter suburb. Now, if you look at your own future development strategy, the very one that you use as the foundation for making Mapua grow that much, you'll find that it actually doesn't comply with many of the objectives of the FDS. It does not reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It does not have good access to jobs and services. It does not minimize the impact on the natural environment, and it does not prioritize productive land for primary industries. Now, I totally understand that you'll probably say, well, we're not here to discuss the future development strategy, and if that's the view that you want to take, that's on your conscience, not ours. So if we look at the Mapua master plan only, at least consider how you provide for all that growth. And excuse the language, but low-density urban sprawl really sucks. And it sucks because it mucks up our future. Not only does it destroy the number one factor that makes Mapua special, its rural countryside surroundings, we also just simply cannot afford it. This is a graph that Peter Nance from the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission has put together that shows very clearly that we are now, you, the council, are now grappling with the impact of the infrastructure that was created between the 1950s and 1980s. This is only the beginning. You cannot keep up. The cost of the maintenance and renewal costs, renewal of this infrastructure hits with delay, but when it hits in perpetuity. The infrastructure, Victoria has concluded in a report last year that the infrastructure cost for a new dwelling in a dispersed city is 59,000 Australian dollars more expensive than in a compact city model. The New South Wales Productivity Commission has concluded that the infrastructure costs to enable greenfield growth is more than twice that of brownfield. And Sense Partners, your own economic advisors, have come up with a study in Wellington that puts this cost in relation to the rates revenue generated in various suburbs. And guess what? They found exactly the same as any other study done around the world looking at this, which shows that the rates revenue of denser, more central suburbs is subsidizing those far-flung, low-density suburbs. They actually have a negative rates revenue for you. The cost of the infrastructure is higher than the rates revenue. So why do we build more of that? It makes no sense. Like, even if we disregard all the other negative impacts of urban sprawl. If you're feeling the pinch at TDC now, this is only the beginning. Buckle up, because your business model is fundamentally wrong.
Microphone.
As it's currently presented, the master plan is catering for around 600 to 650 homes over a 30-year period, or 1,000 more people. However, during consultation, all the options for zonings presented the same development footprint. This is a significant oversight. Presenting in this way failed to communicate one of the biggest advantages of increased density or intensification, which is that it allows for growth while preserving rural land, i.e. growth can be achieved with a much smaller footprint. We propose an alternative solution. Sorry, just the next slide. Next slide, yep, this one. If new development is concentrated only in the areas marked green, that same housing yield of 600 to 650 homes can be achieved without even touching the rural land marked with an X. The Mapua Master Plan also suggests a mixture of density required for the new development. However, this fails to acknowledge the contribution of existing housing stock, which is predominantly 3 to 4 bedroom standalone homes, which will still make up 70% of the housing stock in 30 years. Considering that the average household size is forecast to decrease from 2.4 to 2.1 people, the last thing we need in Mapua is more big houses. As such, all new housing should be either medium density or mixed use at a minimum. And the great news is that medium density doesn't need to be ugly, but if you still don't like it, you need to remember why we're doing it, so that we can accommodate growth while preserving rural land. And as we've pointed out, we know that low density promotes car culture, which turns town centres into giant car parks. Look at the images here on the left versus on the right, and I'm sure you can all recognise the image on the right. It means that our streets end up looking like this, car dominated, rather than looking like this. It means it's time we took a good hard look at how we want our towns and cities to look in the future, and good design will play a big role in that. Over to you, Timo.
Now, in order to achieve that, you need some really good spatial design guidance. And really, you know, TDC needs to come up with some proper master planning, proper spatial master plan that people can understand, can read, and therefore consciously agree on what's in it. But if this is not within TDC's capacity at the moment, I understand, and you leave it to developers to provide some outline development plans. If you do that, you need to at least give some clear guidance and rules to the developers as to what needs to be in those outline development plans and how they need to look to achieve the outcomes that we really want. So we need, for instance, rules that show that the buildings are oriented towards the street, that they create an open centre of private gardens in the middle. We need some clear separation between public and private space. We might want to have some continuous building lines with limited setbacks. We need to talk about the size of urban blocks, because if you get this wrong, and you will if you don't specify it, then we'll have issues around outlook, sunlight, privacy. We have made very detailed suggestions as to what this guidance should look like, and would really encourage you to take it on board. Your consultants would charge you for this.
That's 9 minutes.
This is so important. We give you all this advice for free. So please look at it.
So in conclusion, Mapua is not the ideal place for large-scale growth due to its distance from employment centres and lack of non-car transport solutions. However, if Mapua must grow, it needs to be done through high density and strong urban design guidance. By prioritising intensification and quality design, we can accommodate growth while protecting Mapua's rural character and livability.
That's totally up to you if you want to ask us any questions. It doesn't use us 5 minutes.
We've still got time for a question or two. So, Councillor Takey.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with your comments on the submission around the mixed-use neighbourhoods. Makes sense, well, you know, something we need to move to, and granular spatial plans also support that. With your intensification of around existing infrastructure, the Bridge Street and Nelson City Council committing $60 to $70 million to upgrade the pipework to intensify within an existing area. So I challenge some of your assumptions around how effective it is to intensify. That's not my question. That's just a statement.
Can I respond to your statement?
No, my question is around market forces. So often when we talk to developers, builders, they will build what sells. Do you have any evidence that the, say the concept for your super block, that would have a market? And my other question, just to expand to that, is, have you ever thought of, as a group, Nelson Tasman 2050, leading it or trying to get it going as sort of a starter? Because it will be challenging for current developers to possibly believe. So have you sort of done a bit of research on is the demand, and have you thought about kickstarting it?
Now, if I
On microphone only. If you have them both on, it won't work.
If I can respond to your assertion that I am making some claims here, I'm not. I'm basically just conveying research that's been done by Victoria Infrastructure, by the New South Wales Productivity Commission, and by our very own New Zealand Infrastructure Commission. Whether you believe them or not, that's completely up to you. It's not my claims. Okay, I think what you need to look at is operational long-term costs as well, rather than only initial capital investment. But even with the initial capital investment, I think you might find it's different. The reason why it looks different to you is because a lot of the greenfield growth that you see gets development contributions, and a lot of that infrastructure is carried by the developers.
Point of order.
Councillor, no more questions.
But to respond to your question, yeah, I will respond to your
I'm in
question,
charge
Councillor Doakey.
Timo, that's it. Okay. First of all, councillors, you ask a question, you don't make a statement. All right. We've got time limits for today. Statements are not out of this process from councillors. It's questions and questions only. That was more of a statement than a question. We won't have that today. Okay. One more brief question, Councillor McKenzie, and then that's it.
Thank you, through the chair. Vincent and Timo, I mean, I was really intrigued by the boardwalk idea. So my question is, I'm assuming boats go up down those two channels. So that idea would prohibit boating, I guess.
If you're just jumping over to the Bridge to Rabbit Island idea, yeah, that was some concepts, but you can build boardwalks that have a raised bit that would allow boats to go up them or something.
Oh, okay, boardwalk with a bridge.
Yeah, if you look, there's a boardwalk up at Whananaki in Northland, and that actually has a raised part in the middle which boats travel under.
Okay, I'm sorry, Councillor Hill, we're well over time. We can't take your question at this time, but I'll give you first go at the next one.
I just wanted
Okay.
to say that can we please have the screen sharing happening for each presentation? It's very helpful to be able to see the slides as they're being spoken to. Thank you.
Yep, we've the assistants had noted that, and we were trying to get it on before. Thank you for coming in, gentlemen, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, you were a fabulous audience.
So remember, councillors, simple questions, no statements. Okay, we'll collect them for later. Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to our next, and it's Jan Ellis. I've probably got the pronunciation wrong, Jan. So you've got 5 minutes. I know you wanted longer, but we have all read your submission. I spent quite a bit of time on it in the last couple of days. So 5 minutes, and if you just press the microphone, and we'll put yours up. Wait till we get it up on the screen, and then we'll start, and we'll try and share it with those on Zoom.
Right, are we ready? Good morning. My name is Jan Heijs. I had a slide there to, am I controlling this? Not working? While we're setting that up, I have been working in local government, and I am the author of the urban water strategy and the regional catchment plan at Tasman district. So I want to basically on the process to date. I was very disappointed to find out that in the consultation document that was that actually hardly any of my previous feedback was included. So I'm really wondering whether I'm wasting my time or not. And I hope by now talking to the elected members, I get some here. Yeah. The biggest thing that upsets me in Mapua is that many residents at the moment have to leave their own community, their friends and their family, simply because there are no small housing options available. Not at all. Also, young families, starters, singles don't have options in Mapua. So I think that's the big crux. That's the big problem we have. The market hasn't provided and will never if we don't require those type of dwellings to be built. So I would suggest that 90% of any new development needs to be 1 and 2 bedrooms. Then it's about the growth narrative. If you look at the introduction, it's only about growth. There's no reference at all to all the other principles that we as community really wanted to be achieved. So it's very biased. By the way, in the dictionary, urban refers to cities and towns, not to villages. So I think there's a huge bias in the master plan. It's only about growth, 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 growth. And as a consequence, we're building here a very exclusive seaside village where many locals will be driven out over time. Now, this is a slightly, pretty much the same slide as Nelson Tasman 2050 provided. The point I'm making here is that by providing more intense development, and thank you for listening to that part of the feedback of the community, allowed for the deferred residential, the amount of capacity created easily provide for the capacity that was originally needed in the greenfield developments along Seaton Valley. So we don't need Seaton Valley. On top of that, we might get the fast track area and some other developments that are now being processed. So there's plenty of capacity. We don't need those greenfields. Then the thing that really confuses me, there's a huge part that is showed in the map there that are left out. So you left half of Mapua out of the master plan. Those people also have a right to know what your intentions are. Are you going to remain the status quo? I know they're in a sea level rise area, but it's hard to comprehend why you don't. Can I redevelop? So I believe there's definitely in case to. Basically this has to be included with a strategy that has to be provided with the community. On the outline development plans and design guidelines, I totally agree with Nelson Tasman 2050. We need them, but they need to. So the master plan gives guidance to the development of those. So there needs to be enough detail in the master plan to give that guidance. There's no detail, so the detail is there. And again, I I emphasize the need for the 1 and 2 bedrooms, and I don't like gated community retirement villages. They are 20th century expensive solutions. It's an easy way out for the council, but it's not really an intergenerational solution. Co-housing would be much better. Then coming to the stormwater plan, and I'd like to call myself an expert on that. It's very hard to access. It's not anywhere near the same quality as the Richmond and the Motueka catchment plans. You can't, the water sensitive design is very poorly understood. It's only talking about treatment. Water sensitive design is a design philosophy. And so there's no evidence that actually councils who provided this catchment plan or council staff who provided this actually understand this. There's no pre and post development assessment, so we don't know what the development will cause on effects, on flooding, on environmental, on stream loss. That's the least you want to do with a growth plan. There's nothing in the catchment plan that actually talks about that. There's no contamination risk assessment. It's a very easy exercise to do, like in the Richmond catchment plan. It's absent. It's not even talked about. And then there's 2 major errors in the catchment plan. One is that if you read the catchment plan, it looks like that the wetland proposed is the same. For stormwater treatment is the same wetland as the reinstated natural wetland. You cannot combine those 2 types of wetlands. So there's a big error in assuming that you can combine treatment wetlands and natural wetlands. And the other one, and somewhere in the plan it says water sensitive design is excluded from residential development. That's actually factually incorrect. Your own land development manual says stormwater treatment shall be provided in greenfield, infill, and brownfield developments. So there are some. Yep. So there are some really errors in there. I've put a few other little things in there, but in the end of the day, I think it's so incomplete and inconsistent that it actually needs another draft for it to be processed over time. And please read my submission. Please read my submission. I know it's 26 pages, but I think I made a lot of other points that I don't think will pretty much support my position. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We don't have any time for questions. So thank you for your submission. It was very detailed and comprehensive. Now we've now got Rob Ford, Andy, and Jane Brown. Are they here? If they'd like to come up, they're not here. Or do I? You, Rob? Rob? Yep. Pleased to see you. So you've heard, you get 5 minutes.
Yep, sure.
And we'll give you a ding at 4. It's up to you how you use the time.
Okay, I'll keep it focused on 2 main aspects of Andy and Jane Brown. They own property at 120 Hicks Road, which fronts Mapua Drive, and also it's opposite the Seton Valley intersection, the Seton Valley Road intersection. Now, in the master plan, which we've been engaging with council staff over time and on site with a walkover, there's an area that has been going to be future commercial zoning, which is down at the very base of the property at the low level. And that's one area that we have concerns of. Currently has a stream running through there, and there has also been soil testing in that area, which shows that the pavement design in that area would be extremely expensive to do commercial development in there. And we also suggest that 175 Mapua Drive, which is on the opposite side of the road, which is Gary Clark, who submitted previously, is an area that is supported for commercial development. It's proposed to be filled and go up to that level for commercial development. Now, we do note that that area at the bottom there, which is shown for commercial development, is also in the hazard overlay, which just borders the hazard overlay there. So the inundation area will come right up to that border. Now, there is another aspect to this site here with a detention pond, which there seems to be a conflicting records showing a detention pond over commercial zone. Now that council's looking at trying to relocate that detention pond above the commercial zone. But again, the soil types and issues in that area just doesn't suit to have commercial zones sitting right next to a detention pond, let alone below it, to deal with, to try and get a developer on there to build a supermarket or whatever is going to be going there. It's going to be extremely expensive and probably prohibitive to anyone to even look at. So it's probably end up listing a commercial zone that's not even usable. especially with the creek going through it and the setback requirements. The other aspect to this is that in my submission, to talk about detention ponds. Now, the detention pond is in the TNT report talks about catchment areas, but Seton Valley has a large detention area that's going to be created long term. Now, you can offset detention ponds from one area to another area as long as the output is going to be the same location. And having various detention ponds in various locations becomes very expensive for the ratepayers long term for council maintenance. So ideally, council should, as a consultant, which I've done many developments over the last 30 years, you've got detention ponds everywhere, and developers pay for those, but they should be offset to one large one as better outcome. And if it's in the same catchment area, rather than having multiple little detention ponds over various areas. And also, it's good productive use of land for residential development. The other area of concern for this is that what I see from as a consultant is that currently you're looking at detention ponds to protect a hazard zone area, but eventually that hazard zone area will be inundated, and it's currently a retreat area. Or under the district plan and long-term MPS requirements, it's not going to be able to be developed further. Commercial development can be done by filling it, and there's also aspects of commercial developments where you have it's only designed for 50 years, where the residential is designed for 100 years. So a lot of those areas should be looked at in regards to the legislation of what can be built and what can't be built, rather than what we wish to see there, which is a little bit in the master plan. Hasn't gone quite that distance. And when you see this master plan, you see when you put a subdivision consent in or an application for land use consent, they don't tend to tie into each other. So there's quite an overlap there, and you do end up having council staff scratching their heads trying to work out how you're going to make something to fit the council's plan long term. As I say, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I think it does need to be looked at a bit more closely and looked at more cost effectively. And the other aspect of the applicant is concerned about is also trying to keep the coastal atmosphere there, the coastal environment feeling of the sites. So for this site here, its flood inundation hazard overlay effectively means that will become foreshore at some point. So that's the other aspect you probably need to look at, is that what will the foreshore look like in 100 years or 150 years, and what you're doing to designing that outcome now. Have you got any questions?
I'll just check with councillors. That's Councillor Daly.
Am I allowed to go, Chair? Just checking.
A question, not a statement.
The question, when you say coastal feel, maintaining coastal feel, what might that look like? Do you have can you broadly outline what that might look like in terms of a development? Is it the size? Is it the nature of the buildings? Is it the spacing?
I think the district plan currently has a requirement for coastal environment zones. So at the moment, you've got Mapua sitting within a coastal environment zone, and you're trying to mould it into a residential development zone, like as if you're trying to put Richmond in Mapua, and it doesn't quite fit at the moment. So I think the landowners want to see that you're not going to create a high density subdivision 200 metres from the foreshore, yet you've got a hazard overlay which is going to be gone within 150 years, 200 years, so the hazard might be gone. All of a sudden you've got a foreshore sitting there, and you've got a high density subdivision with no green space, no foreshore amenities. You know, you've got to look at the long-term picture, not the short-term picture. Yeah.
Okay. So we're now over time. Rob, thanks for coming in, and thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll now move over to, I think it's Bill Lynch and Jackie McNae. I'm not sure who's speaking. Good morning to you both. Welcome. And we'll need a few seconds just to get the PowerPoint presentation up. Nice to see you again, Jackie. I understand you don't have a presentation, but have you got some documents to give us?
I just thought the plan we sent in might have been put up, but I have the hard copies. Sure. Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, councillors and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the master plan. With me is Bill Lynch. Erica, Bill's wife, is busy with the orchard harvest at the moment. She may be able to pop in at some stage. So Bill and Erica own property in Seaton Valley. Sorry, can you not hear me? Perhaps I'm not speaking into the microphone. Bill and Erica own property at Seaton Valley, and they have a 19.3 hectare property there. And if I'm going to mainly talk to the plan circulated. In general, Bill and Erica support the general direction of the master plan in relation to their property. They support the mix of density of development, medium density, mixed density, and some standard density. The issue that we just would like to highlight, having done a little bit more very high level concept work, the delineation in your master plan, we request that it reflects the delineation of the plan that we have circulated. And one of the main reasons for that is this is a property very dominated by contour, and so zoning and development opportunities need to work with that contour. And the second plan there shows you the contour, some of which is quite steep towards the northwestern boundary. And so the areas that we've identified for medium density, mixed density and standard density seek to work with that. So the main change in terms of the alignment of the delineation of different densities is for clusters 10 and 11 shown on that plan. We see that as all medium density. That's generally steeper land, so what's favoured there is apartment style development, with minimising levels of earthworks and large spaces, green spaces around those areas, with a little bit of change to the mixed density area and in the rear corner there, standard density. Having had the pleasure of hearing the previous speakers, I think that the vision for this land very much fits with what a lot of the previous speakers are talking about. Having the opportunity for mixed density and medium density development, a range of housing typology, in particular the opportunity, as Bill can speak to with a lot of experience in the development he's part of in Cairns for a mixed density development as a dual key arrangement, so that you may have a principal dwelling, it may be a 2-bedroom dwelling, and adjoined to that, maybe on the other side of a garage, a 1-bedroom dwelling that could cater for multi-generational living, maybe elderly parents, or perhaps a young couple saving to buy for their dwelling and want to stay with mum and dad, allowing that type of development. The other area, again, other speakers, it's not just about a place to live, it's a place to recreate, and more and more these days, a place to work from. And the very high level layout we've shown here, with the focus over the lake area, with the green areas in the gully coming down with a range of walkways. As you'll notice, cluster 12 on that plan, that's envisaged at the foot of the lake, if you like. That's envisaged as an area that could be a shared workspace, shared offices, where there would be shared IT equipment, etc., meeting rooms for meetings like this, for doing Teams meetings, etc., with all the audio-visual gear that you can share. So that's sort of a very quick overview, and Bill's here and he can tell you a little bit more about his experience with this development in Australia, but also open to questions. If you've
got 1 minute.
Okay. Oh, well, of course, I guess I can offer a qualified experience aspect to our own partial residence in far north Queensland, where we gained this concept and have enjoyed it in a situation that's not dissimilar with a range of medium and high density living apartments around a lagoon, very similar to the concept that we found ourselves with in Mapua. And what's happened is quite intriguing. Instead of this being an investment opportunity, it's become very attractive to families and to elderly people, because the flexibility of what the Aussies call the dual key apartment, where there'd predominantly be a 2-bedroom apartment, and on the same foyer maybe a 1-bedroom. So in the early days, the parents can help the siblings get started. They can put them when they form a relationship in the studio apartment, and then as the family comes, they move out, and the roles are switched later on. When the elders need support, the family can put them in the 1-bedroom apartment and ship them, or they can put a caregiver in. And it's a wonderful alternative to moving into a retirement village, which is not everyone's cup of tea, and it provides also flexibility throughout for the family to manage their whole lifestyle experience. So to us, we've enjoyed it. We've watched a change take place with modern demographics. People don't want to be stuck doing their section in their garden all weekend. They're active, they're mobile, they're business tigers, they're looking after their families, and the whole of the situation is really fitted for the future of a modern society that wants to be on the move.
Okay, thank you for that. You're now well over time, so we won't have any time for questions.
It's okay.
Thank you for coming in, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Well, you've now got Bruce Struthers. Bruce? And you've got a presentation, and councillors, all the presentations are now on LG Hub, but you'll have to refresh to be able to see them. So you can do that in the break, or you can do it now as we go. All right, Bruce, you've heard the drill. You've got 5 minutes. We'll give you a bell at 4. It's up to you how you use the time.
Thank you very much, councillors and staff. It's real clear the amount of work the staff has put into the long-term
We're
plan.
just getting your presentation up.
Again, thank you, staff, for your effort in building this plan. One thing I'd like to point out is that sometimes nature has other plans. We can all plan for the unexpected and avoid building in areas of potential risk, but there's a striking similarity to the Mediterranean climate topology and natural hazard risk of Pacific Palisades, California, and Mapua. We do not get this Santa Ana winds, but live in an area of drought, high winds, and torrential rains. We're also constrained by the mountain and sea, so have very little redundancy in our roading network. Building local roads to accommodate geometry provides a network that is challenging to navigate in daily use, and more importantly, by first responders in case of fire. Our hills are covered with highly flammable gorse, broom, pine, manuka, and gum, just as Pacific Palisades has gum, sage, and chaparral, and pine. Could a fire like this at Palisades happen here? It's important to finish all 4 environmental plan changes before council, before seriously considering a Mapua master plan, as Mapua sits within all 4 subject areas. I have to ask if the demand for housing units is real. In the plan change planners feedback podcast of December 2024, planners assured us that they have accurate, reliable data on housing demand, and that providing more housing is the path to providing housing affordability. This is simplistic thinking, not current by current market conditions. Housing availability in Mapua is high, as there are currently 55 houses and sections listed for sale in Mapua and Ruby Bay and realestate.co.nz. The median listing prices for these houses is $1,085,000, up 10% from last year. The price of housing depends on a wide range of factors. The most commonly blamed is materials cost. But if you look closely, one of the most sensitive costs preparing the greenfield sections for build is prep on the build site, a building site that is predominantly on steep hills with no infrastructure, or on a hail site requiring significant remediation, is by its nature more expensive to build on than a flat near an established rural center. A meter of toxic soil costs around $300 to dispose in our landfills. One of the ways to reduce the cost of housing on greenfield is to avoid rugged hills, low valleys, large open agricultural sections, and the land holding the toxic legacy of what's been called past agricultural practices. One way to reduce the cost of housing on greenfields, I'm repeating myself, parts of Stafford Drive receiving the runoff from pre-1970s orchards and sheep dips surrounding it is the definitive greenfield to avoid. Once built, household chemicals and pesticides and fertilizers from the sports field will further burden stormwater treatment. And this is how it was in 1974. This is plans that have occurred since. This is also a map of pending subdivision requests outside the master plan and the number of housing units that are proposed to be supported. I'll just go with my closure, which is development is like a melanoma, metastasizing and infiltrating across the land. It spreads rapidly and leaves ugly clusters everywhere, forever destroying productive land and eventually killing the host. My dermatologist joyfully applies liquid nitrogen to freeze any suspect growth on me. I encourage you to freeze any further development on Mapua until a real housing supply deficit presents itself. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bruce. We'll just see if there's any questions. We've got a few seconds. None? No? So that was clear. Thank you for your submission and thank you for taking the time coming in this morning. Next, we've got Marion Satherley. Good morning, Marion. Welcome. You know the drill?
Yep. Good morning.
Thank you.
I wish to start by stating that I support the concept of the Mapua Master Plan. However, I am concerned about Mapua's character. It appears this plan does not acknowledge and respect the most fundamental objective set out in this plan, which is to protect the unique character within the master plan boundaries. The proposed plan shows and allows for the loss of areas' unique character by allowing rural land to be subdivided and built on with medium density housing options which do not fit the Mapua character, allowing for two-storey buildings to be placed in sightlines that will block distant hills and or sea. Overlooking important aspects of Mapua character is the semi-rural feel, property privacy, the feeling of space, having full sunlight hours and having space on a property for private vehicles to avoid forced street parking, not protecting Mapua's wharf and the waterfront for community users above tourist and tourism businesses. To risk losing the boat ramp is to risk losing Mapua's unique identity, not understanding, listening to and protecting what is important to residents and continuing to treat community consultation as a tick box exercise. I am concerned about community engagement. The Mapua Master Plan documents state that prior to the second round of engagement, letters were sent to landowners affected by the draft proposals. As an affected landowner, we were not contacted by TDC. As an impacted neighbour, it is now makes me question the validity of the Master Plan document itself and how seriously TDC take the concerns of community members. All zoning changes must be publicly notified and affected neighbours contacted directly. I am concerned about housing. There appears to be no ability for individuals to start small in the property ownership via a tiny home or the possibility of them to upgrade at a later date. TDC needs to empower low-income residents into home ownership by allowing alternative options other than greenfield developments and the like. I support intensification in the bounds of Mapua Village only. I support variations of houses and business options that respect Mapua's unique character, meaning no semi-attached dwellings and sections greater than 1,000 square metres on rural land. I wish Council to be cautious of handpicking information used by developers to show positive support for a project when this view may not be true reflection of the actual plans being submitted. Mapua is a seaside village with a high percentage of residents owning boats, trailers, 2 cars and camper vans, and these must be planned and catered for. TDC has an obligation to serve residents' housing needs before the needs of developers. I'm concerned about cultural significance. Cultural significance needs to respect and include all cultures, not just one. Otherwise, we may be guilty of racism. Mapua's unique identity must be protected to avoid it becoming a lookalike of other communities. I'm concerned about transportation, that the money appears to be wasted on ideological solutions that have no permanence. And the Streets for People thing for me is a great example of that. I am concerned about council interpretation of climate change. Climate change is referred to throughout the document, yet council's own photographic evidence within the document between 1940 and 2024 shows that over this 84-year period, there is more land mass in 2024 due to some reclamation at the Clyde Park with absolutely no changes to the shoreline. I encourage Council to look beyond the science models provided by IPCC and suggest they review the publication in the Science and Climate Journal that came out 5 days ago, titled A Critical Reassessment of the Anthropologic CO2 Global Warming Hypothesis. Imperial evidence contradicts ICP's model and forced solar assumptions. I would like to encourage TDC to review Australian climate professor Ian Plummer's research outcome. I agree climate is changing, however, the change is through natural climate cycles, which can be altered through human interference, such as the weather modification techniques used worldwide, along with impacts of programs such as HARP, DARPA and Raytheon. Finally, making Mapua a growth area makes no logical sense, especially considering Mapua has limited space, limited TDC service infrastructure along with funding issues, and a lack of many community services provided for in Mapua like secondary schools, pools and sports facilities. Thank you.
Great, that was pretty good. Only just over time, so we don't have time for questions. Thank you, Marion, for your submission, and thank you for coming in. Colin Walker, not here. Trevor Marshall, I see you at the back there, Trevor. Yep. Can you make sure, and anyone who's coming, we have the microphones a bit closer because it's been a bit hard for some people to hear. So, Trevor, you've always had a loud voice, so you'll be fine. And we've just got to put your presentation up. Because you're representing a group, you get 10 minutes, but you don't have to use it all. It's up to you. And remember, if you want questions, you have to finish before then.
All set? Okay.
All set.
Yep, fine. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here representing the Mapua Boat Ramp Community Trust. Our submission is very brief and very short. One of the concerns we have is that when we originally did our submission for a boat ramp, which is to go onto the waterfront park, we included in our original submission putting in a building for a community building for Sea Scouts, etc., and other marine affected groups. Due to concerns by the community about the location and the size and the height, we withdrew that. And so our proposal is that we actually move that facility and put it onto the area known as Kite Park. Kite Park is currently earmarked for potential subdivision. It's been divided off by council staff, and part of it is commercial, part of it is for residential. We would like to see that uncertainty of the park is put it permanently into a park or community land green bank area, and that part of that, and particularly in relation to site 14 and 16 on the plan, is allocated so that eventually a facility can be built for Sea Scouts, ocean rowing, rescue centre, sailing, waka ama, all those sorts of things. It's an ideal location because it's going to be directly across the road from where the boat ramp, if granted, would be perfect for it to allow quick, easy access for those groups. Those groups also away from the Sea Scouts, currently struggling for space where they're on the Mapua Wharf, and they desperately need more space and to grow because of their demand. The other groups that we're dealing with, ocean rowing is desperate for a facility. They have been trying to put one at Rabbit Island, but I think they've given up on that. And so this is an ideal location. They would like to be involved there. And we have quite a list of other groups that would love to have a facility where they can be in there. Mapua is a seaside village. There is growth, whether we like it or not, it's coming. And so we need to ensure that we have plenty of community facilities and green spaces there. This is one of the last few remaining big spaces right in the heart. And so we must ensure that it stays that way. It's not turned into residential or commercial use. It serves a great purpose for parking overflow, particularly since the council have their commercial premises down at the waterfront. So it's a benefit to council to ensure that plenty of people can go and use those areas. And really we can just go to the next slide, which will show the space there. That is the space that we're proposing. The good thing with it is that there's enough room for further expansion of that facility if it's ever needed. It's far enough away from the neighbouring properties to not greatly affect them. And the overall design, our initial concept, if we can go to the next plan, please, is that we would do this building, sorry, right, okay, I'm still using crayons and paper, let alone technology. So obviously too, it fits in with the design that was done by council for their commercial area, which creates a bit of a theme for the entire area. This is just the concept. This is open for improvement discussion with the community if we go down the path. The great thing too, from the council's point of view, is that we would be involved in fundraising for the facility. So it takes the strain off council having to provide for all of that. All we want is the use of the land, either the council gift it to the trust, and the trustees are that if ever we cease to exist, it all goes back to the council anyway, including the buildings and facilities we put in there. But really, even a lease is ideal, which we can then turn around and start our fundraising for. So that's pretty much what we'd like to see. As again, the important thing is we've got to have places here for youth, because if we don't, as Mapua grows, and I understand the expectation is that the school roll will double over in the near future with all the developments going to go on, we need these places for kids to go to. Otherwise, they're just going to wander the street, and we know what happens then. Open for any questions.
You can all ignore that, Bill, because you had extra time. So, okay. All right. Yeah. So, questions of Trevor. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Trevor, I just want to clarify. So, what's currently known as Kite Park, you're wanting it to be zoned for recreational use here rather than open space, because obviously there is a difference if you want to put a building on.
Yes, I mean, if you have a look further down on Aranui Road, where you've got council land and you've got buildings here, the bowling club, the tennis club, all of those sorts of things. So I think it could be an easy blend. It's not going right in the middle. We've wanted to see that it will actually go to the side, right next to Mike's property, with a bit of gap. Yeah, that creates that green area out there. My understanding is that council have had a special rate levy to cover the cost of that development over the years. We haven't been able to obtain from council staff what that money is, how much that has been generated by that, because the idea was that that land would be sold off to help pay for the remediation. However, we suspect that with the rate demands going on over the number of years, most of that debt would have been recovered. So there wouldn't be a real loss to council.
I could comment about, actually, I'm not sure if I should, Mr. Chairman, about the remediation, that rate still being paid.
It is, because it's not all paid off yet.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other questions of Trevor at this time? I've got one briefly, if no one else has got one. Have you got a date when your consent's going to be determined?
Yeah, I think we're looking about the middle of next month. We've had a number of queries from the commissioners, etc., which has been responded to, and from more experts, etc. So we are hoping for about the 15th, 16th of next month, hopefully.
All right, no other questions. Thank you for your presentation, Trevor, and thank you for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Colin Walker, I don't think is here, but Hayden Taylor. No, but I've got him later on behalf. So, yeah, just here that's all right. We'll concentrate on that now, and then you can just come here and name and I can find it on
Caustor, Buschhuchla, land owner there instead of Hayden for Tasman Bay Estates.
And you're representing?
Tasman Bay Estates.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just instead of Hayden.
Oh, instead of Hayden. So you're instead of Hayden.
That's, yeah, somehow it wasn't submitted quite.
Okay, that's fine. Again, you're representing a group.
No, my company.
A company, and it's this
Tasman Bay Estates.
Yeah.
You
get a maximum of 10 minutes, but you don't have to use it all. And we'll give you a bell at 9 if you're still talking, if you want to answer any, if you want any questions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've put everything in the written application, which everybody has read. So I don't want to spend too much time on repeating that. It's pretty much just being here to represent us, to give you the opportunity to ask questions. And for me, it was like obviously a bit interesting in a general master plan setting like this, which is called the Mapua master plan. We are 1K away from it. We're using parts of the Mapua water sourcing, which is agreed with council, and council is aware of our sort of village planning for the Tasman community there along Mapua Road, which is in 1K away from the boundary of this master plan. And my question, of course, is why is the master plan called Mapua Master Plan not including a project of our scale we're looking into the future, which was also what council has seen quite as a positive opportunity to build a community, which also was based in our concept always on offering exactly what's missing and what has mentioned many times, that a good mix of housing opportunities. Because our village plan was always, as presented, based on a wide variety of that, not only cutting up land in lots and selling them, but also offering potential rental opportunities or smaller lots for. I'm not using the word tiny homes because tiny homes is not a good term, I think, for houses of a size of maybe 70 squares, which is absolutely missing in this country, and that's why we have an affordability crisis. Because obviously for most developers there's not much money in there, but I see the bigger picture, and I think the community needs an offering where especially older generations have an opportunity to stay in the region, but downsize, not given, not existing, and won't in this commercial climate. So if the council doesn't help supporting those concepts, and have said from day one that I'm happy to lock myself into all sorts of agreements, which I'm used to do in Germany like that. You do a council developer contract where you actually agree on a certain portion of sites being sold at a way lower price to achieve that and that. I'm happy to do all of that, but I need council on board and not just following their normal council planning rules, not thinking too much about the next level, which is the client. Because we talk all the time about inaffordability issues, but sorry, but it's the council to have to be on board for that, to actually force developers or work with developers to create different products for the market. If we don't start that, it's not going to happen, and we will see more developers cutting up land and making a lot of money with it, but the community will suffer from the problem to be pushed into retirement villages. So either we start something and change it to give especially our older communities the opportunity to stay home in a smaller downsized opportunity, and also we need rentals, and rentals are missing, especially in the rural area. You know, if you want to find a rental in the whole Mapua, Motueka region, good luck on that one. It's going to be a rundown house with single glazing at $600 a week, which is completely unacceptable because nothing modern is being built. And same there, it needs the community to come together with developers to create contracts to say like, okay, what is the community needing? We need smaller lots, and we need rentals, which are modern, warm, and affordable. And it seems not to happen in rural communities, unfortunately, because the viability on paper for developers is not as good as cutting up land in 600 square meter blocks and building $600,000 houses on them. So that's my statement. It has to be a discussion, and that's why I don't understand why we stopped this Mapua master plan 1K of my boundary, where a more something like a more holistic approach has been tried and approached, and it has not been taken into consideration for the future plan, especially because of all the seaside town issues, which obviously have been discussed. We are in Tasman, we are far back enough from the coast to have we've got no inundation issues. We're still very close to Mapua, and the village plan as such also included like a village center where we could build a food store the size of Connings, something like that, quite easy, which is a good model that is existing now, which I was thinking would be good for the community there to have something like Connings with a bit more dry goods, maybe, combination of that and a 4 square or something, but rather than a nice, a big supermarket, because that sort of 7,000 people community wouldn't need that size, but still a good community center.
Okay, so we'll just see if there's any questions. Councillor McKenzie has got a question.
Thank you through the chair. When I was reading your submission, I was just I tried to look at it on the mapping system because I wanted to understand the polygon representing your land. So what numbers Horton Road, Marriages Road, Mamaku? Can you just give me the... No, okay.
Yeah, numbers is difficult because it's pretty much when you go from Marriages Road, when you drive into Marriages to the right-hand side all the way over to Horton.
Yeah.
All of that with a few exemptions. The first application we put in, so the reason for us to going for the 58 lot subdevelopment is that another problem, of course, in planning something larger is that we do not or have not had, let's see what this new law does, but we need for developers to build something like that, we need the help from the government as in financing. And I'm not saying I want the money, I'm just saying it's stupid that we go to the banks, get ripped off with interest rates instead of the government giving us funds to develop, which we then pay back as soon as it's sold, no problem. But we need the government to step in, which I think is in the planning now, to give us access to money for building infrastructure, which is then later council owned anyway. So I don't think it's a good model to make developers pay for infrastructure and then, later on put rates bills on it rather than be part of the development team to say, right, this water and wastewater money comes from the government and obviously will be paid back by the property owner, but at a fair price and not at an exploded price where the banks make most of the money, because the developer first has to get the money, which they don't most of the time because of the banking system. and then the client at the end of it is being ripped off twice because developer needs margin, banks need interest, and it takes 3 years to develop. So all that money is obviously adding up in the property price. Was going a bit left field from that, but I mean that's the area there, and it needs a bit of servicing, and water is allocated through that contract we have with the council there.
Okay, we've got time for one more question if anyone's got one. Otherwise, we know the area, and I know that you submitted in the FDS so in 2022. So thank you very much for coming in, and thank you for your presentation. I'll just see a gentleman came, Mr. Walker. No, it's for after. All right. So, councillors, I think that's everyone that's now, and we will break for 10 minutes to get a cup of tea and then resume. So you've got a 10-minute break now, and we're going to resume probably 5 past. Okay. Mike, Councillor Kininmonth, if you could take your seat, we'll start again. Yeah. Hello, everybody. We'll get underway. I think we've still got people on here, and we're going to be a few minutes ahead of schedule, which is always a good start. Is it Melanie Drewery? Melanie? If you'd like to come up to the table, Melanie. So if you haven't heard before, you get 5 minutes. How you use that 5 minutes is up to you. You can take that your submission has been read, and we'll give you a bell at 4 minutes. Okay? So welcome. And if you just turn on the speaker, I'll turn mine off.
That's on now? Yeah. Hello, my name is Melanie Drewery and I am a NIMBY. I am also a conspiracy theorist and a very unhappy ratepayer paying a 300% rates increase to cover the salaries of the people intent on ruining my lifestyle and my land. I was not this person 5 years ago. Thank you for shattering any illusions I had about property owners' rights, democracy and common decency. I also now understand that when qualityplanning.org say that consultation is ascertaining community views and opinions to achieve better results, they do not mean for me or the current residents and ratepayers. Who are the results better for? The developers, who most certainly are NIMBYs and carry a lot more weight than those of the community. The current rate-paying community, not the imaginary future community. This consultation is a farce. A lot of money and time has been spent on propaganda, cherry-picking what suits TDC's agenda and ignoring what doesn't. Seaton Valley is the area I want to focus on because I'm selfish. When I express my upset about my land potentially being grabbed for a walkway, cycleway through the middle of it, and being mislabelled as a wetland, one of your staffers told me, he's here today, it's the needs of the community over the wants of the few. But I still want to talk about my perspective, not the needs of the future imaginary people. Consultation is not voting. Numbers don't matter. 36% of community feedback supported option 1 on the consultation document. 26% wanted no change. 19% supported option 1A and 19% supported option 2. 1A is what you plan to do. Let's face it, 1A is what you always planned to do. Landowner consultation is not listening either, unless you are one of the big guys developing. The lady who consulted with us is here today too. None of what she said was true. One of the four landowners at the bottom of Seaton Valley, the 2 who wanted to be rezoned are staying as Rural 1. The 2 who did not want to be rezoned are changing to commercial business. That's the opposite of what we wanted as landowners. Uh-oh, what's going on? Option 1 allowed for a commercial area along Mapua Drive and Stafford Drive. This would have allowed the gravel ridge at the front of my property to be developed, freeing up the back lowland for TDC to use for stormwater recreation and ecological purposes. Mentioned several times in your supporting documents, this plan is for 49 Stafford Drive and surrounding areas. You don't bother to name it, but that's my land, the surrounding area. Do the owners of 49 Stafford Drive intend to give that lowland as part of their development contributions? It was certainly implied that they were doing so. I hope you're not purchasing the lowland the developers bought instead of them contributing it. Now that the fast track process has allowed for nearly double the amount of houses on that land, I also assume there will be less of 49 Stafford Drive set aside for ponding and more runoff from all of those extra hard surfaces. I guess that's either going into the village or into my place. You've canned the commercial zone of option 1, yet you still want half of my land. At least developers are making money to cover the costs of meeting councillors' wants and not living in limbo with everyone focusing their imaginary needs on their home. I can assure you that is not fun. Option 1A only allows for a tiny commercial area, some of which is as low as my back paddocks, some of which is recognised as SNA native bush.
This would allow you to insist on a land contribution for widening Seton Valley Road to benefit, the big developer uphill again. Sea level rise has been blamed for the change of heart on option 1. Commercial zones are allowed to flood in storm events, raised building pads and lower car parking allow drainage and ponding. Your extreme predictions show that most of Mapua will be underwater at the time that my gravel ridge goes under, yet you continue to allow new builds in the low centre of Mapua and in the light industrial zone directly across the road. The light industrial zone on the same gravel ridge as me, nearer to the sea and separated only by a road. For some reason, my land must remain as Rural 1, even though it no longer meets the criteria for Rural 1 land. It must remain as Rural 1 while being surrounded by developments, noisy, dirty, drainy developments, until such time as council sees fit to take it off me, so that all of those future people can drain, recreate and enjoy the nature they have squeezed out of their own spaces. Their predicted imaginary needs and wants are more important than mine or the current communities. TDC has made plans for my land and seems to have developed some bizarre sense of ownership. I am not allowed to carry out my rights as a Rural 1 landowner anymore. I am not allowed to move earth to protect myself from the increased noise or runoff. I can't sell with all of your intentions hanging over
well
my
over
land.
time now.
Yeah, I've got about 3 lines to go. My life is effectively on hold for your future plans. I'm holding out hope that the national government's shake-up of the RMA will save me from this corruption. They say the new system will protect landowners against regulatory takings, enabling them to seek recourse if found that unjustified restrictions have been placed on their land. It is their intention to give property owners some rights back. Thank goodness. And in the words of one of my favourite singers, I offer you my honest regards for disregarding me.
Thank you for your submission. We've now got Henk and Vermeer. Have I got it pronounced briefly? And if not Henk, we've got Elspeth Collier. Or Henk's, no, Henk, if you're here, fine. I didn't know, I was waiting for someone to respond. So Henk, 5 minutes. And we'll give you a call at 4 if you want some questions. It's up to you how you use it. All right.
Good morning, all. I've better put glasses on, I suppose. I oppose that part of our property at 179 Mapua Drive is marked as a wetland. This man here promised to stand up at every public meeting to say that it's not a wetland. He has not done so. This is misleading to the public by publishing that part of our properties with a wetland. It's not, it never has been. This duty taken by your planning team to reduce the value of our property so that the TDC can acquire it at a later date. That's being told at a meeting at home by your planning man. Independent test result indicated that our property was never a wetland. Get this idea out of the master plan. You can make a mechanical wetland if you want when you have purchased it, which might happen in 6 years. Your plan has been told by the planning team to build a water retention pond in the future when the land has been acquired, either by purchase or part of a property as an acquisition to cater to hold back water from current and future proposed subdivisions. Where's then there's not proper water mitigation in the park. This was evident in a developer next door filling the land. Allowing to fill in drains, redirecting drainage in the opposite direction. The recontouring of the land allowed surface water to flow in an opposite direction. This seemed to be allowed to happen with Belinda, and suspected reasons were A, developer was an ex-employee of the TDC, B, it was filled owned by the TDC. How do we trust your staff to have written an accurate master plan draft when there is such from your staff members? How do we trust, I opposed a shared path drainage easement which enters 175 Mapua Drive. It goes over the top of a right-of-way easement, which is illegal. Then it carries on through 2 cottages, which will need to be compensated for by the TDC. This land owned The landowner of this property is an ex-employee of and a developer and a current TDC contractor, where this easement runs through 175 adjacent to our driveway. Then a TDC proposes to cross our boundary and create a shared pathway drainage way diagonally through our farm towards Seton Valley Road. Again, we are threatened if we were going to stop this by the planning team would use land acquisition to acquire this easement. The pathway has been poorly thought through, and it seems it's more to suit the neighbouring developer than the actual community, as better options such a pathway which doesn't need to cut through the centre of an operational farm, but ruin our lives if your child got tangled up in a mower or got injured by a farm animal. The consideration of a commercial zones are just unrealistic, marked on the map with no testing done to see if land is suitable. Again, it's poor planning by your staff. Seton Valley proposed commercial area, both landowners, but in McKinsey, that they did not want their land zone change to commercial. Part of this land is all down a zone. Seton Valley right will next to line. By the time they decided the kind of zone, the anything, let alone for an attack. We have some problem that we have now developed that much better. But here, limited information was given will be unsuitable directed or target adjacent results done by time landowner. Block B, actual state from in front of Mapua Drive, in front of Vermeer Road, and then on Long Stafford Drive, which is Gravel Ridge. The same gravel ridge that the school has been built on, and the light industrial zone at Warren Place, including the large building that is currently under construction along Stafford Drive. The geotech results where the current large building is under construction stated that this land is suitable for building, which is the same gravel ridge as Block B, our property. At workshops held in Mapua, a large part of the local population preferred Block B over any other proposed commercial area. Why did the TDC not take into account what the community wants, where the commercial zones are going to be? Why did the TDC not take into account what the affected landowners wanted at the first stages of preparing this draft when landowners were interviewed by Anna? No testing has been done to make sure that what work would be and where. No look at local knowledge was required from locals. You would have learned a lot more from local knowledge than looking at a screen on your desktop. Before any further subdivisions are allowed to go ahead, we need to have infrastructure in place to accommodate the growing population. Our hospital operates over 100% most days. The roads are a joke and in poor state of repair and can't cope with current.
Thank you, out of
time. Let alone increased traffic volumes. Can you quote predictions and how accurate is that figure? All you can see is black roof.
Thank you. You're well over time now. So thank you for your presentation and thank you for coming in today.
My questions.
It will be part of our deliberation.
Thank you.
And our deliberations are due on the 28th of April. So Elspeth, we've just got to put up a presentation. So if you just come up and it'll take a few seconds to put that up.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but I couldn't hear the last part. The microphone's doing something weird, so it's very garbled and muddled and not clear at all.
We'll try another microphone, Chris.
Thank you.
and we'll make sure that people bring them in nice and close. Elspeth, I understand you're here on behalf of the Waimea Inlet Forum Group, so you get 10 minutes. If you want questions, we will time you and you'll get a dong at 9. But if you want more questions, you need to leave more time. Okay.
Right. Well, as you've already said, I'm speaking today on behalf of the Waimea Inlet Forum Working Group. I'm also here on behalf of the many resident coastal birds of Mapua. I'm not so much commenting on the draft as discussing what is missing from the plan and needs to be addressed. One of the 10 main principles in the master plan is to protect and enhance the ecological values of Mapua, including its interaction with the Waimea estuary, remnant native vegetation, streams and wetlands. Mapua village is located in the middle of a very dynamic part of the Waimea Inlet estuary, where the Seton Valley stream flows through a delta at the Mapua embayment and then out to sea. It is home to a very long list of coastal birds that feed, roost and nest here. Many of the birds on this list are classified as at risk or declining. There are 3 SNAs, or significant natural areas, within 500 metres of Mapua Wharf. These are not marked on the master plan. The Mapua embayment is in the heart of the village. The causeway to the leisure park bisects the embayment. The upper inland half is salt marsh and an SNA, and the other half is the mudflats or delta and shell bank on the edge of the channel. The salt marsh and delta provide rich habitats for bird and marine life. The shell bank is where many birds, especially oyster catchers, feed. Other fish forage in the channels. This area is hugely important for birds, and the health of Seton Valley stream is essential for the health of the shellfish in the delta that the birds feed on. Earthworks upstream in Seton Valley are a potential risk to this area if sediment is increased. There are quite a few images here, but I want to illustrate the extent of the bird life that is going on around us. As a reminder that it is not only humans that live in and around Mapua. All the Mapua shoreline, mudflats and islands are bird habitat. All these photos were taken by Raywin Woods, either overlooking the Mapua embayment or from Grossie Point, so very much in and around the village. Probably the most vulnerable species are Turia pango, or variable oyster catchers. They nest in open sandy places just above the high tide mark. 2 regular nesting places are below the causeway. You can see they're below the causeway, to the leisure park and the beach to the leisure park. Oh, wrong way, sorry. Variable oyster catchers nest here every year and would have done so for a very, very long time. They take their chicks to the shell bank to feed. Despite signage during the breeding season, despite the signage during the breeding season and many dog owners keeping their dogs on a leash, there are still lots of dogs running freely through the delta area, especially at low tide. A big problem is that the leisure park allows guests to bring their dogs in peak tourist season, which coincides with nesting season for the oyster catchers. These were all taken in the last year. Survival rates for the chicks are not good. 2 chicks fledged this year, and last year only one that hatched. The only one that hatched lasted just a few days. Waimea Inlet Forum requested that the Delta area, including the area below mean high water springs, have a dog restriction in the new dog control bylaw, but this request was not successful. A walking route from the village to the coast is necessary for walkers and dog walkers who need a route to the designated dog exercise area on the coast beyond the leisure park. I've got a marker here. Yeah, so this area here is a designated dog area. And currently people walk along here at low tide. The dogs all run freely around here. That's where the birds, that's one of the bird nesting areas, and that's the other nesting area. And that is the exact route from the causeway around here that people currently use. So it goes right through the nesting area. So, but the route is necessary to get to the open coast. A new walkway that avoids the nesting and feeding areas in the delta must be included in the Mapua master plan. A walkway through the leisure park would solve the problem, although obviously problematic while the park is privately owned. So the other important area is the shell bank here. So the oyster catchers nest here, and then take their chicks across here to the shell bank. Kite Park is a roosting and feeding area for oyster catchers and other waders, particularly during wetter weather. There can be up to 100 birds here. Birds in general have been pushed out of traditional feeding and roosting places, and we should accommodate them wherever possible. We support the recommendation to reclassify Kite Park as open space, but only so long as it remains grassed and available for birds to continue foraging here. The main environmental content in the draft master plan is reinstating a former wetland within Seaton Valley with, this is a quote, to bring back moderate populations of rare species such as the giant cockapoo and the Australasian bittern, spotless crake and marsh birds. This will be very expensive and will take many years to establish with an unknown chance of success. If bittern, marsh crake, fern birds, etc. have any chance of surviving here, there would need to be no cat covenants in all new developments around the wetland, and ideally a predator-proof fence. It is much easier to protect existing habitats than starting again with a restoration project. The highest ecological priority in the master plan must be to proactively avoid or limit human activities that adversely impact on existing wildlife around Mapua village. The master plan is all about increasing the human population in Mapua. This must not be at the cost of nature and the wildlife that live here also. That's it.
Thank you. You've left some time for questions. So to Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Elspeth, for your submission. I just wanted to check. I've heard some numbers about what percentage of the world population of pied oyster catchers resides in the Mapua area and Kite Park.
Yeah.
Do you have that figure? I can't.
It's in my original submission, and yeah, it's something. Those figures came from David Melville. It's something like I haven't got a copy of my original submission, but
I was flicking through trying to find it.
Something like I can't remember 3 or 5, 3% of the world population. I think are in Tasman Bay. It's somewhere around that. That's kind of the number. And the other thing is that it's really hard to tell because some of the birds that come and nest here might come from as far away as Kaikoura, so they do travel. But the pairs that are, I mean, in those photographs, a lot of those birds are tagged and they do nest in the same place every year, and would like to continue doing so.
Okay, Councillor McKenzie, this will be the last question.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Elspeth. I just wanted to get I think you clarified it in your talk when I read your submission, and you talked about that area had been overlooked in the dog control bylaw. So yes, the words that you use, but I think what I'm here, and my question was it not considered? But I think you're saying that it was considered and it was decided to stick with the arrangement that's currently in place.
Well, I mean, the dog control bylaw was really good for the the areas around the Waimea Inlet, which were the reserves that were dogs are now excluded from, well, as of the 31st March, but that area, it was mentioned, and there was a request that dogs not be allowed below mean high to run freely around mean high water springs, and that area was one of the areas that was asked to be looked at. But I think what happened was that everything got lumped together the change was with the reserve areas rather than, and because that area isn't a council reserve, it didn't happen.
All right, well, thank you, Elspeth. If anyone's got phones, we'll turn them off. I didn't remind people of that, but that's okay. It's always a donation to charity when the phone goes off in the chamber. A few of us have got a few fines over the years. Jim Vause. Jim? So you know the drill. It's 5 minutes. A bell will go at 4. Okay. If you can turn the speaker on, down the button. That's it. And pull it nice and close.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, everybody. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for this opportunity to give some feedback on the master plan that's been presented. I would like to be more positive about it and have more time, but 5 minutes does limit me. Sorry. My role in this is I've got quite a lot of experience at critical appraisal of the processes that are used to data synthesize. And then I look at this master plan from that perspective, and remembering that the master plan is supposedly a comprehensive plan. And it also states in the beginning that if the planning is not well done, there could be adverse effects on community well-being. So this sets the scope. Community well-being, I wish to emphasise. I looked at the methodology that was put forward in the master plan. It has some very good descriptions of the community consultation process and the meetings of council staff and the governors, you people. However, I did wonder, where was the hui for the Māori of Mapua? I'm not local area, I'm not mana whenua, I'm mana here. But we did not have any form of hui. In fact, there was actually not a decent hui even amongst the Pākehā, because the meetings were put on by the MDCA. I wondered, do you guys are happy with that? Question. However, that's the consultation that was undertaken, but there's nothing in your master plan about the actual process of synthesis of the information and knowledge that was derived from that community consultation. For instance, how were issues weighed? How was considered decisions reached? How were the demands of the developers, government and community balanced? These are problems you guys had to make judgments on, but there is nothing in your methodology that allows me to critique and understand how these decisions were made. I'll give you an example. Infill. You know that there was a lot of stuff in the consultation talked about infill. There was only one comment in the master plan appendix section about that, in reference to south of Aranui Road. There was nothing more about it. I wondered, where was this put? What was happened? How did you guys consider that? Another one is the transport, the principle that you had about carbon footprint. That was in your principles. So you've done some good things, which I like, about the cycleways and the walkways. But when you balance that up against the huge increase in carbon footprint resulted from the development, vehicle travel and development itself, how did you guys make that balance in your judgment of meeting your very principles that you had in your master plan? So after the principle, I can see why some things do not develop, were not in the master plan. So for instance, adjacent development. So you've got the Tahimana development that's going to happen up on Stagecoach Road. You've got the other ones in Pomona. You've got across the highway. There are significant populations there which will impact, particularly on transport, parking and things like the Aranui Road, which I was sitting on this morning, and there's incessant traffic down there outside the tennis courts. But that hasn't been considered. There's already enough population going to come in through the very planning and the fact that right next door to me, I know the landowner there has applied for fast track. So there's a huge amount, but I don't see any of that consideration of these things. Lacking in the plan is energy, electrical supply. There's already a problem with Tasman lines because they cannot cope with the 3 kilowatts that are more than 3 kilowatts if I want to feed that back into the grid. So there's going to be a lot of solar development. But where is the part in your plan that considers this key infrastructure, an infrastructure defined by Treasury? So electricity is defined by Treasury. Another one is communications, digital. Fibre is not available to me on Seton Valley Road, but it's actually in there. But that is because as a residential customer, I cannot buy fibre. And the cellular broadband is hopelessly overloaded at present. I get 5 minutes per second between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m, which is absolutely hopeless and worse than plain old telephone line. Another key area is the social assets. There is nothing in your plan about the necessary social assets to meet the needs of the community as defined in your objectives of the plan. There's nothing about elder care. The population of Mapua is aging. It's in your own work. You have nothing that is planned around that. There's nothing about the community support. There's nothing about the primary health care. The PHO is a string of data. You don't have anything. It's a totally separate one. I'd like to briefly talk about the wetlands proposed for Seton Valley Road.
For 5 minutes, Jim.
So it's about to finish. Using this as a detention pond for runoff from houses is something that should not happen because the quaternary ammonium cleaning compounds that you wet and forget kill all the aquatic population in that wetlands and the other things. So just remember that when you're talking about the wetlands. So finally, I would request that either you change your rhetoric about what you're trying to do, or you go back to this plan and ask it to address the things that the community needs and has a true master plan and not a development plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Just remember, we haven't made any decisions yet. No, we haven't. All right, we've got Jessie Loader on behalf of the Tamaha Sea Scouts. Jessie, good to see you again. I'm sure we've seen you before. So you're representing a group, so you get 10 minutes. You don't have to use it all, and a bell will go at 9.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for giving us a chance to speak on behalf of the group. I'm Jessie Loader. I'm the group leader of the Tamaha Sea Scout group, and with me I've got
Amanda Brett, and I used to be the group leader of the Tamaha Sea Scout group.
Pull the speaker in close to you because
I'm Amanda Brett, and I used to be the group leader. I'm just his support.
So I'm assuming you've already read the submission that we had put in, albeit late. So Amanda and I are talking on behalf of the group, but also as parents of youth who are in the school and the local community. So in short, the status quo for Tamaha Sea Scouts would work. So at the moment, we've got our boat shed on the wharf. Although it could be larger, ideally it would be larger, we're making it work. But it's also important that we have a hall separate to the wharf area because how the different activities with the group are run. So the boats are used throughout summer by all sections of the group, most predominantly the older kids. But then you've got the younger ones that aren't as actively water-based who need somewhere, a hall space, but they also need that green space, and that's why a hall in the domain is absolutely perfect for that. A big concern for us would be if the boat shed was ever to be moved too far from the water. It's really, really critical that we're within 100 metres of the water, and the main part of that is, firstly, it reduces vehicle movement. So one suggestion I've heard was the boat shed would be moved down to Domain or possibly somewhere else and would have a combined hull and boat shed. That just would not work for the boat side of it. For the hull side, absolutely fine. And there's a few reasons for that. First, you've got vehicle movements. That would be more vehicle movements back and forth through the village to tow the trail vehicles. And then the other big problem is it's the hand launch vessels. So you've got the little sailing dinghies that currently stored in the boat shed by the wharf can be literally walked to the water by the youth. Also, there's all the sit on top kayaks that can literally be chucked in water. So that's, yeah, really, really why.
Plus we've got all the sailing helmets and all the life jackets. And if you've actually been down at the wharf and seen us trying to transport all this stuff, it gets quite tricky. How many did you have on the water last night?
So last night we had 19 youth on the water. So if there was something forgotten, like a life jacket or a marine radio first aid kit, then of course it's meaning more trips back through the village. So that's really important for our boat storage to be maintained within close proximity to the wharf.
Yep. And if we were not at the wharf, we wouldn't be a Sea Scouts. So we've got about 80% of our youth that are there for the on water. If we were to move any further away, we would be a Land Scout, and that would not be a point of difference. We've got kids from Rewalker that come in because they want the Sea Scout side. And what would we say? Probably more.
You've got to be close to that microphone.
Predominantly Mahana, Mapua. But yeah, they're happy to come from Richmond because the only other Sea Scouts is in Port Nelson.
Yeah, so that really is a point of difference. So there's a Land Scout group in Rewalker, and there's a Richmond Scout group here, plus a Scout group in Brightwater. But we have youth drive from Rewalker into Mapua and on the Waimea Plains to Mapua because they want the water side of it. So, yeah, it's the Sea Scout side that really makes us stand out from the others. And I think the group's been going it was started in August 1932. So it's got a long history within the community. Admittedly, it used to be a Land Scout group. It wasn't until the late 80s it became a Sea Scout group. But our group and Sea Scouts are bucking the national trend of Scouts as a whole, and that our membership is strong and also growing. So we've currently got 46 youth with 18 wanting to join, whereas a lot of the Land Scout groups are struggling with membership. So
yeah, we're even getting preschoolers that want to get on there as early as possible from the community. Questions? Yeah.
All right, so we'll take questions, and I'm going to give you the first one. So how long do they end up on your waiting list?
However long it takes to have enough volunteer leaders, because what is it, 26? Is that what you've decided is your max you'll take the Cubs? Yeah.
So if you have more leaders, you could have more Scouts?
We sure could, yes, definitely.
And more nights. So volunteer?
Yeah, so please, if anyone wants to volunteer, because once those 18 kids are in the system, you know they're going to enjoy it and their friends want to join. So the waiting list can be a constant thing. So yeah, it's not our facilities that have got us locked on not being able to take more youth, it's the volunteers.
And that's probably why we have to keep it on the down low, because we can't actually advertise for youth without having people who are dedicated to volunteer with the right skills.
Any questions of councillors? I thought very good presentation, and we have seen you before, and it's good to see you again. And thank you for the work that you do in your community. It makes a big difference. That's it. So thank you again. You're under time, but good presentation.
Thank you.
And, thank you again. So we've got next Tim Kelly. And is it Belinda with you, or are you on your own? I know, I see someone coming up. So you're 10 minutes and you're the cycle trail, Nelson Tasman Cycle Trail Trust.
Okay, my name is Kelly. I'm one of the trust, and with me is Belinda, walking trail manager. She's going to be here. She's the chair today. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Cycle Trails Trust.
Hang on for a moment, we've got a problem with the microphone. So, hang on, we might swap it out.
But no. Does that sound better? Sounds better.
Chris, can you give the hand up? Is that better? Do you hear that? I've gone. Anyway, we'll try that. Just pull it nice and close.
Okay. Yes, I'm sure you're familiar with the work of the Cycle Trails Trust. Our responsibility is not only the Great Taste Trail, but also the Coppermine Trail. But also we have a role in general cycling advocacy within the district. The Great Taste Trail is probably unusual amongst the 23 great rides in New Zealand in that it's seen very high rates of usage by the local communities, local people along its route. In addition, obviously, to domestic and international tourists. The focus of our submission relates specifically to the issue of connectivity between the Mapua urban area and Rabbit Island to the south. And that connection, of course, is the critical part of the Great Taste Trail. So that the current situation, and I'll just preface this by saying I have no wish to be critical of the existing ferry operator. I think they do a great job in sometimes quite difficult circumstances, but the reality of that ferry connection is that the service only operates hourly and it operates for limited hours. For example, it doesn't commence until 10 o'clock in the morning. The cost is high for the length of the crossing. I'm sure many of you have done that crossing. It takes a matter of minutes. It's now $15 for an adult one-way fare. There are reductions, of course, for returns and family groups and season tickets and so forth, but it is still a fairly expensive crossing. And these issues lead to a significant suppression of travel across that short section of border. And often, and I've done this myself, people will drive with their bikes around the Rough Island and start a cycle from there rather than start in Mapua. And that also precludes the use of the ferry by potential commuting activity, which has become potentially more viable now with the prevalent use of e-bikes. I'm sure a number of you have got e-bikes. And added to that, the vessel itself has a very limited and finite life, leading to uncertainty about the availability of that service in the future. So turning to the future, the master plan process is all about facilitating growth in the Mapua area. And there's talk of 60% growth over the next 30 years, which is pretty significant. That, of course, is in addition to planned growth in other urban areas, Stoke, Richmond, Motueka, and so on. And the cumulative effect of all of that growth will be a significant growth in demand for all types of travel. And that includes commuting travel and recreational travel demand. So in terms of the draft master plan, the context then is one of significant growth in travel demands. And our concern as a trust is that the response of the master plan to that growth is to deal with the easy stuff in terms of improving internal connectivity within Mapua. And I stress we support all of that. But the draft master plan shies away from dealing with the more knotty issue of external connectivity to and from the south. And we are concerned that the draft master plan supporting document appears to have prejudged this issue by unilaterally deciding that any possibility of a walking or cycling connection be discounted on consenting grounds and its anticipated effect on the views of the estuary. So the questions arise: who made that decision? What information was used? Who was consulted to reach that view, that position? And effectively, that approach seeks to remove this whole connectivity issue from the master plan process. But what happens when the existing vessel reaches the end of its life? What happens if there is no operator willing to provide the service in the future? Essentially, this will result in reactive planning and policy. And we believe a more proactive position is needed on this issue. And I would just like to emphasize this is not a rant by a small number of privileged e-bike riders who want a free crossing. It's more about creating a permanent connection, which is an integral part of the district transportation network and which encourages cycling as a mode of transport. And by doing so, reduces travel demand, vehicular travel demand on the State Highway 660 corridor. In our submission, which I hope you read, you'll also see a number of bullet points in which we list what we consider to be the benefits of providing a bridge crossing. So just to summarise what it is we're seeking that issues associated with this connectivity are addressed in a proactive manner and as an integral part of this master plan process. We're seeking that TDC acts in a manner consistent with its many, many policy positions declared, for example, in the long-term plan, to increase the number of people using cycling as a mode of travel and reducing vehicular travel demand. And we're seeking the development of a cohesive strategy for this crossing. As a minimum, and perhaps in the shorter term, to consider the ferry as a component of the district public transport network, but with a medium and longer term commitment for the establishment of a fixed connection. Finally, I'd just like to thank TDC both for the master plan process and for giving us this opportunity to submit. Do you want to?
No.
Well, thanks, Tim. I'll just see if there's any questions, and the Deputy Mayor's got one, and I've possibly got one. I'll see if someone else asks it first. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Tim and Belinda, for the presentation. Just in relation to the cycle bridge you're talking about, we have looked at that through other forums, and obviously the cost is telephone numbers really large. Do you think that cyclists would pay a toll to have that bridge available 24/7 to contribute towards the cost?
Well, I can't really speak for every other cyclist, but for myself, I would happily pay a toll to use the facility. Quite how you would enforce that toll, I'm not sure, but that's part of the wider, I mean, it's a wide raft of issues you'd have to consider as part of considering a bridge option.
I guess you haven't had a chance as the trust to consider that position, but obviously it would be something to give you that certainty that the link's always going to be there. As I say, the cost's huge and we can put some infrastructure on it, but some other way of contributing towards the cost would be worth considering.
Although we obviously understand the costs are significant for riding such a property, but there may be opportunities that can help us. For example, that's not for us to look into, that's for TDC.
Right, so we'll move on to the next question from Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for your submissions. Apologies if it was in there, I didn't see it. But has the trust considered land-based link around the edge of the estuary? It's obviously a significant distance more, but has the trust given any research or debate about that option?
At the time of the Great Taste Trail business plan preparation back in 2011, a considerable amount of effort was put into looking at that alternative. The result was that it would cost about the same amount of money as building the bridge, and decided that commuters wouldn't use it as much because it would be a longer circuitous route around the edge of the estuary. So the short term to medium term option was the ferry.
Okay, that looks like that's the questions. And I know that we are spending considerable money on a Waimeha link. I think it's in the long-term plan. So that's something else that we're funding jointly. Thank you for your presentation. It'll be interesting to see how much the trust would contribute themselves. But that's
we would definitely entertain it.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's not much money in MB these days to what there was at the beginning. So, right. And the next submitter is Lesley McIntyre.
Oh, sorry. There is actually a contestable fund opened at MB for the moment for projects up to $5 million.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but there's not much money. Simple. Lesley McIntyre. Lesley, if you'd like to come up. Thank you again. And Lesley, you know the drill. 5 minutes. We'll give you a thing at 4. Okay. And how you use the time is up to you.
I'm going to be very brief. Thank you for the opportunity to listen. You will have all read my submission. It was completed very...
Lesley, if you could bring that microphone up.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. You will have read my submission. It was completed on Friday night before the cut-off, and I was quite rushed. I thought that some of the questions seemed to predispose actual developments not yet happened. And my submission, I stand by what I wrote, but there's some points, there's some of the questions I would like to clarify further. With regards to future commercial development in Mapua, I answered yes to many of those questions. My answers were because I was thinking if substantial development it predicates that this plan for a vastly increased population in Mapua goes ahead. So if we do have a greater increased population, of course we'll need, more commercial areas. Definitely a larger supermarket space. A medical centre a larger medical centre will be required, and perhaps even a dedicated bus depot to commute all of the children to their various schools, as there will be no room at Mapua School. With regards to the question about the proposed Seaton Valley wetland area, it looks lovely on paper, but as the majority benefit seemingly would be the land developers, they should pay for the majority. Effective landowners must be compensated fairly should this go ahead. So, I mean, I think it looks very nice, but with regards to intensification of housing, there's a huge resource of housing in the Tasman and New Zealand wide areas presently used for short-term lets, e.g. Airbnb, short-term rental and off-peak. If this was available for New Zealanders, there would not be this crazy unplanned need for intensification of our remaining green spaces. And lastly, I hope that our council is beginning to learn that the more houses you park in an enclosed area, the greater the traffic gridlock. And I experience this quite often here in Richmond, coming from Mapua. And that's all I've got to say for today. Thanks.
Right, thank you, Lesley. Short and stick the same. Does anybody have any questions of Lesley at this time? It appears not. So again, thank you for your submission and thank you for coming in. Now we're just going to check if we'll just see if any of the others, because we've got 2 people unconfirmed and we're waiting for the Mapua Tennis Club to arrive. And it looks like there's no one else here. All right. So what we're going to do is we'll take a break for 5 minutes just to see if Helen turns up, because I'd like to hear hers before we break for lunch. So we'll have a 5-minute break. Stretch your legs, have a chat. I love that bell. Okay, one of our presenters has confused the day or something, so she is going to come at 10 to 1. We were going to adjourn at 12:30. We're now going to adjourn now and be back in here just before 10 to 1. And then we've got that will be the Mapua Tennis Club. And then we've got another 5. So we should be finished nicely at 1:30. 4 o'clock is golf. Okay, so you've got a lunch now and we'll see you back here at 12 minutes to 1. How's that? Thank you. who used to work for us. Helen, if you'd like to come up, we've got a couple of councillors that are a bit late, but I did warn them to be back in time. So we'll start. So because you're representing a group, Helen, you've got 10 minutes. We will ding at 9 if you want to answer any question.
Okay, I won't be too long. And first of all, apologies, I was late. Yeah, my bad. Oh, thank you. Okay, so kia ora, my name is Helen Lane and I'm representing the Mapua Tennis Club as well as the committee. So first of all, before I talk about what we would like, I just want to firstly thank council for their ongoing support that they have given to our tennis club over the years, and with particular regard to contributing to the costs of the resurfacing of courts 3 and 4, and also the installation of the lights. So both those investments have already paid off, in our opinion. We see the courts being used morning, day and night. I use them at 7 a.m. in the summer. And also we've noticed there's been a real sharp upturn of kids, teenagers using them. And with that in mind, the committee have made sure that we allow free access for certain periods during the week. And so we're very thankful for your support. So we just wanted to raise a couple of points with regard to the Mapua master plan. And as I'm sure you're all aware, Mapua is a growing coastal community, and part of the charm of living out there is having access to great recreational reserves and facilities. And of course, in my opinion, the tennis club is just one of those gems. It's used all the time, and we love it. So with that in mind, because they're so well used and we have an increase in our club membership, we are hoping that we could get the resurfacing of courts 1 and 2 done. We're also looking to build a small shed close to the site just for the ball machine and some maintenance equipment like the sweeper. We also think a really easy win could also be some seating or picnic tables just outside courts 1 and 2. So that's right beside the E-gate, because we noticed that during interclub, particularly with the kids, when their parents are out watching, there's no place to sit. So there's a small track between the public toilets and the E-gate where we thought we could put either seating or a picnic table, and that would be under the shade of a lovely tree. So that is something that we would love. And then we're having a bit of an issue with the E-gate. And so we are looking to, in the future, looking for some support from council to fix that. It sometimes can be a bit sticky, but with that investment, we're very aware that we will also bear the costs of some of this investment too. So we're very prudent with our money and our funds. So those are probably the key points that we want to raise as part of the master plan. And there has been also some talk within the community that pickleball is also one of those sports. I think it's the fastest growing sport in the world. So we don't have those courts in Mapua, although it's not part of what we do. It is a big demand, so it's something to think about in the future. And then looking farther into the future, if Seton Valley area and other parts of Mapua were to grow, you know, we hope that council would consider other courts at a different location, but that's obviously a medium to long-term issue. So alongside those initiatives, we are working on organizing power supply. So that's a socket that we can use for power for the sweeper and the ball machine. And we were hoping to work alongside your parts and reserves team to get permission for that. So that's a non-financial contribution, but certainly something that we could work alongside council with. And I think that's about it. I also just want to take the opportunity to point out that it's our 100-year anniversary in 2026 for the Mapua Tennis Club. I think the original tennis club site was not where the current domain site is, but I understand it was somewhere closer to the waterfront park. So with that, I'm sure we'll be organizing some kind of centenary celebration. So we will no doubt get hold of our councillors as well as contact your staff just to help promote that in 2026. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got two people with questions so far. So Councillor Butler and then Councillor Shalcroft.
Thanks for the presentation. Look, I'm just, you're just speaking about pickleball and other sports. And at the rec park in Golden Bay, the outdoor courts have been painted to accommodate different sports, and I'm on the same court. And I'm just not sure if you were aware of that. So that is, that's available for you to look at any time.
Is that on a concrete surface or a
asphalt surface? Asphalt surface, and there are different sports can be played on the same court because of the lines, different coloured lines being painted on.
Yeah, I guess with the tennis court, we've got the AstroTurf, which is good for the knees and the hips, but probably less so for the asphalt. But I'm not aware, I could be wrong, I'm not aware of basketball courts or anything like that, but I do understand you can use multi-use courts. But yeah, look, pickleball, it's interesting and it's fun. So it's something just to consider in the long term.
Okay, Councillor Shalcroft.
Yeah, I've just got two. Thanks, Helen. Are you guys an incorporated society?
Oh, good question.
Okay, that's right. And the other one was around there was talk around that there was possibly going to be like a club rooms or clubhouse going in. Is that going to be long term?
Yeah, so we talked about that at the committee and we agreed it's not a priority for us at this time. It could be later. So I believe one of our committee reps went to a meeting maybe last year. It wasn't me. And we've definitely raised it as a committee, and it's just not a priority at the moment. We've got other priorities.
Thank you.
Okay then, Helen, thank you. And you do know there's some new pickleball courts in Richmond.
In Richmond, yeah, I do. Yeah.
I have been on them.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, thank you, Helen. Now we're going to have we've got some people this afternoon that are going to be on Zoom, and Bruce is on Zoom as I understand it. So Bruce, if you can hear me, if you can unmute your mic, you have, because you're not in the room, the rules are pretty simple, 5 minutes, and we'll give you a bell at 4. And how you use the time is up to you if you want to allow some time for questions. Okay? Can you hear us?
Thank you. Yes, I think, am I coming through okay?
Not too, you could turn up your volume a bit.
Yes, I think my volume is just my voice, so I'll try a bit harder. Thank you for having me on Zoom, Kia ora. I'm Bruce, a long-term resident in Ruby Bay and temporarily in Auckland. So thank you for accommodating me. I'd rather be there today if I could. The master plan is intended to plan for the next 30 years, so that's through to 2055. By that time, New Zealand is required to be at net zero carbon for at least 5 years by then. So how are we going to accommodate an even greater number of Mapua residents and still enable them to get to Richmond at net zero? So first of all, why Richmond? All the usual reasons: education, health matters, employment, retail, social, etc. And the Nelson bit doesn't matter so much because there are very good connections from Richmond to Nelson. So part of the answer for getting to Richmond will be electric vehicles, but public and active transport will be vital as well. So the issues here, we've got excellent buses, but not enough of them yet. And the Great Taste Trail is fantastic, but the ferry times limit its use and they are seasonal, so not suited for commuting. So good for recreation and tourism, but not for day-to-day use and getting to work or whatever. And the problem with the coastal highway is that it is dangerous for cycling and could get worse. I was recently involved in a survey of commuting habits in the Nelson Tasman area, and a few key findings from that most people commute using petrol or diesel on their own. A majority do that. Secondly, that e-bikes are a real game changer. And it's partly because you ride them, you don't sweat. You can arrive at work, you get there faster, and you don't have to have separate recreational clothing. You can slip straight into a desk or whatever. But the third key finding there is that there would be way more cycling, but it's often considered too dangerous. And I think the state highway section from Mapua to Richmond, it's only 19 kilometres, but parts of it are too risky to cycle. Solutions to this, and I offer two. One is more frequent buses, including at the weekends, and this would often have the effect of reducing the need for households to have two cars. Often that's at the weekend that's most necessary. I understand that 2026 is a target year for weekend buses, but it's subject to funding, and I hope that we can make that a priority. The second solution I'm suggesting is a safe cycle trail. The crucial bit is the 8 kilometres from Mapua Drive to Redwood Road. That's the road that joins up to Rabbit Island. And then from that point on can join with a Great Taste Trail on to Richmond. And the good news is that a lot of it is almost there. If you look at the coastal side of the highway, parts of it are already protected by safety barriers, and even parts of it, some of that is sealed or a good surface. There may be other options, but this one is simple. Why do that? Because it's safer, it's got lower emissions, it's a part of a healthy lifestyle, it makes Mapua an attractive place to live and commute from, helps to build a resilient community, for example, resistant to oil supply shocks, less traffic and congestion, lower roading costs, and lower household costs, including the possibility of having just one car per Mapua home. Please plan for this or something similar to this, and let's try to make it happen. Thank you.
Very good, Bruce. You actually did that in 5 minutes. So that's fine. I'll allow one question if somebody's got a question. Although we've heard a similar submission before about cycling and e-bikes. So no questions, Bruce. Thank you very much. And you will know that I do ride an e-bike. So it's a good way of getting around. So thank you for taking the time to make a submission. We'll now move to our next submitter. Is that Renee sitting at the back? Yes, Renee, would you like to come up to the microphone? As you know, 5 minutes. We'll give you a ballot for how you use it is up to you. Okay.
Closer than that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I understand you've read my submission. It's relatively straightforward and simple. I'd just like to highlight one or two issues from the submission. The first one is that I oppose the amalgamation of the existing waterfront park into Kite Park and turning it into a single reserve. The reason for that is that the Kite Park at the moment is under stress. And when I say it's under stress from competing uses. One is housing, which it's owned for currently. The other one is recreation, which it is used for as well. It is also used as overflow parking for the council's own commercial interests in Mapua. And as I drove out today, there would have been 15 cars parked, camper vans on the site.
And it's also in demand for a future boat trailer park, potentially. And my fear with respect to the kite park is that he who shouts loudest will prevail. And the other reason I object to the amalgamation is that the kite park is active recreation and parking, things like that, dog walking, kids on motorbikes, golf, whereas the waterfront park is passive recreation. Passive recreation to the same extent as the reserve across the road here is passive recreation, but I sometimes get the impression that passive recreation is not really valued. And by passive recreation, I mean sitting, viewing, communities gathering, people eating their fish and chips, such like. With respect to kite park, and you're also looking at potentially rezoning a significant chunk of land, I ask if any of you have looked at the Queenstown Lakes Community Housing Trust. Because what you've got here is an opportunity to provide affordable housing for the community. And you don't have to recreate the wheel. The wheel's been invented. All you have to do potentially is copy it. The Queenstown Lakes Housing Community Trust provides houses for low to moderate income households who contribute to the social, economic and environmental well-being of the district. When you look at the housing continuum, you start from emergency housing on one end to individual ownership on the other. What the trust does, it deals with the portion in the middle, those on low incomes who otherwise could not afford a house. So it creates programs for affordable rentals, a rent saver program, and a secure home program where eventually people can own their own houses on low incomes. And I think it's incredibly important because if you look at the demographic makeup of Nelson and Tasman and who's moving into it, that's largely what I call old farts, but that's not probably a polite expression. It's people who are nearing retirement. And it's harder for young people to compete with those people who are potentially asset rich, having sold up in Auckland or other cities, moving here. So it's just an opportunity, I believe, the council should be looking at. The other point I'd just like to raise is Grossie Point. And my reason for raising it is that I support the cultural heritage management plan that's been suggested. My concern is I'm told that it's a binary decision. And a binary decision is either 0 or 1. So if it becomes under a cultural heritage management plan, boating facilities on that Grossie will finish. I believe cultural heritage is not one moment in time, but it's a continuum. And what I would like to see is that it recognises the culture that has developed over the past half century, that is that of launching a boat. And I'd just like to read from an internal memo dated the 6th of December 2024 within the council, where the harbour master identified that Grossie Point is an existing boat ramp that has served the community well for decades with little investment from the council other than some signage. Thank you. I'll leave you the internal memo here on the desk for the committee. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't know if I'll describe it as a ramp. A launching site would be better, because I have launched there myself numerous times.
You are correct. However, you've scheduled it in your district plan as a ramp. Schedule 25.
Yeah, well, ramp to me means some concrete or something, but launched down, but it's not. Any questions from anyone? Councillor Kininmonth.
Thank you, Renee, for coming along. Interesting comments there. So the cultural heritage study of Grossie Point, is that for all of Grossie Point, or is that just for part of it? I'm not too sure whether it's for the whole Grossie Point.
I don't know either, Councillor Kininmonth. My discussions have largely been with you on it. That's where I get my knowledge from. But I'm of the view if they're doing one, they should do one for the whole of Crossy, including Waterfront Park and the kite park right around. Because we do know that there are burial sites in Kite Park.
All right. So, look, we liaise closely with iwi, and we've done quite a bit with them in that area. So that answers that. Look, thanks, Renee. That's all we've got time for. We've now got to keep.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got Dr. Chris Van Staden, I think it is. Let's see if he's supposed to be on Zoom from 1 o'clock. So we'll just see. Looks like it. Chris, do you want, Chris, is that you? We haven't got, we've got a Chris up on the screen, but we haven't got, we can't see who it is. So can you hear me, Chris?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you not see me?
No, we can't see you. So your camera's not on, but we can hear you. Oh, looks like we can now.
Okay.
All right. So we can hear you fine.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right. So you get 5 minutes, and I'll tell you when you're at 4. And you can use it how you like.
Yeah,
if you want to answer questions, leave a bit of time at the end.
Okay. So thank you for this opportunity. I have also made a submission, as you know. I'm a resident in Mapua, and I just want to talk about something else that the two previous persons didn't talk about, and that is I'm quite concerned about the village feel of Mapua and how many of these maybe current developments already, but things that are planned might impact on having a village feel. So I guess it is important to make it easier for younger people and for all kinds of people to come and live there. But I think we have to recognize that one of the reasons they want to live there is because it's got this village feel. It's something that's, for example, different to how Richmond feels or how Motueka feels. And I'm just a bit worried that we're losing some of that. And I just want to speak to that. So, for example, I think traffic volumes, for example, in Hicks Road is really getting quite high and taking away some of this village sort of feeling. And if you think about it, Hicks Road is actually a kind of a windy road with many corners and also a bit undulating, going up and down. And lots of traffic on that road makes it quite difficult then. And it's also a road that a lot of people walk on. There's a sidewalk going up all the way and people cycle on that. So my one suggestion would be that you think about maybe restricting traffic on Hicks Road or making a lower speed limit so that we rather use the Aranui Road or Iwa Street, which is like straight roads for traffic going down to the waterfront and those things. The other thing for a village, I feel we can consider is planting more trees. And along the streets, I mean, there was the trees that had to be removed for some reason, and maybe we can replace them. And also in the parks, we have some beautiful parks with no trees in them. And I think if we want to create this village feel, maybe planting more trees in the parks and on the streets would be nice. So my whole submission today, or what I wanted to tell you about, is just to consider the village feel of Mapua as well. The older people that live there, the people that come, the younger people, they all actually have this village idea and this village feel. Measures like putting commercial things in Hicks Road, which is actually a residential area, is a bit strange. Maybe that should be restricted to where we have the commercial areas already. So that's really all I wanted to raise from my submission today. Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Chris. I'll just see if there's any questions around the chamber. Councillor Chalcras has got a question for you.
Mine's just around the village feel. I'm from Wakefield and I've got my own understanding on a village feel, but it seems to be one of those things that everyone seems to have a different interpretation on. So what would be your, just really quickly, village feel? What is that to you?
Well, to me, it's like a area where you can walk, where people walk to the wharf rather than drive, and so it's more pedestrian and cycle friendly with trees, and a bit. Yeah, you're right. Wakefield also gives that feeling in certain parts, and I think obviously we need to allow development. I'm not against that, but I wonder if one can sort of conserve the central part or the old part of Mapua, if you want, sort of, the areas below the Mapua Drive that was there originally, and conserve that more as a village and let the developments happen a little bit further away. I'm not sure, but for me, it will be pedestrian friendly, family friendly, walking with your dog, cycling, just that kind of thing without lots of traffic next to you the whole time.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, thank you for that, and thank you for appearing and coming to give your submission in view.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, and we'll move on to our next person. So let's see if how this next one's on Zoom as well. I think it's Fern Tannock on behalf of Andrew and Susan Talley. So let's see if Vern's on Zoom.
Hi, it's Philip Percy here. Yeah, I'll be speaking on behalf of the Tallies. It's okay.
All right, so you're speaking on behalf of the same people, but it's a different name. So
That's right.
Your name is.
I'm Philip Percy. I'm a planner.
All right. Righto, Philip, you got 5 minutes. I will tell you when you've used 4 because you might want to leave time for questions.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll do my best. Yes, so my name's Philip Percy. I'm a planner engaged by Andrew and Susan Talley to provide them with some advice on the draft Mapua master plan. I've been a planner for about 27 years and involved in most aspects of planning in New Zealand. Mr. and Mrs. Talley made a comprehensive submission on the draft master plan. I'll cover a few points very briefly, but there's obviously a fair bit of material in there. In my experience, master plans are very useful for guiding land use and development across large areas of land that are in multiple ownership. They allow the whole area to be considered as if it were a single integrated development proposal, and they provide for proper planning over a long-term horizon. The fundamental element of proper planning is identification and analysis of constraints. Essentially, what are the things or circumstances that will influence the development of the area? Some constraints are critical considerations like areas of significant flooding and coastal inundation, and others are considerations for management like connectivity to existing development areas. The more critical a constraint is to development, the more information should be gathered about it so it can be properly accounted for in master plan design. And as you well know, there are numerous examples nationally where through a lack of good planning, the wrong land uses have been put in the wrong places. Mr. and Mrs. Talley have raised concerns in their submission about the effects of the development proposed in the draft master plan on land and property in the coastal plain on the seaward side of Stafford Drive. Among other things, they're concerned that the flood and stormwater modelling the council has relied on is not properly accounted for the effects of sea level rise. Along with development-driven changes to water feeding into Seaton Valley, there will also be changes to the behaviour of water from the bottom end of the catchment. Sea level rise, storm surge severity and coastal inundation are predicted to change over time, affecting the capacity of the plains below Seaton Valley and Seaton Valley itself to accommodate the increased water flowing down the catchment. These are critical constraints that must be understood in as much detail as possible. The economic, social, cultural and environmental consequences of not properly understanding and planning for these constraints as part of this master plan process are likely to be very high. The Seaton Valley stormwater and flood attenuation solution is a critical element in the master plan. As I understand the master plan supporting material, without the Seaton Valley attenuation proposal, stormwater and surface flooding from much of the proposed development area will not be fully attenuated. There remains a high degree of uncertainty around the availability, level of control, feasibility and effectiveness of this area for stormwater and flood attenuation. There is also an issue that the attenuation solution may not be of sufficient size to provide capacity for other out-of-sequence residential development that is proposed in the area. For example, the fast-track application development site and some of the Seaton Valley Road consent applications that the council is currently processing. In my view, there are significant opportunities for better constraints analysis to be done before finalising the master plan. The area's long and evolving history of flooding and coastal hazard impacts requires a high information threshold before responsible decisions can be made on whether to greenlight the area for development and encourage investment in the area. Currently, there's insufficient information to demonstrate that the land is safe and suitable for development, and that development will not put existing residents at greater risk of flooding and coastal hazards. And just one other point related to that, Plan Change 85, which relates to natural hazards, or will relate to natural hazards, will potentially significantly change the management approach to development affected by natural hazards. The Issues and Options report that has just been released for consultation identifies the preferred option for managing coastal hazards as, just paraphrasing, reviewing, consolidating and updating the coastal hazard provisions, updating the planning maps, and developing new framework to address coastal hazards and sea level rise, and tailored provisions appropriate to specific areas or possibly district-wide provisions. So quite significant changes.
You're at 4 minutes now.
Thank you. On the basis of coastal and flooding hazards being critical constraints for development in the Mapua area, this natural hazards analysis and planning work associated with the upcoming plan change should be completed ahead of completing the Mapua master plan. Mr. and Mrs. Talley's position is that the master plan should be declined in its current form. Happy to take any questions.
Right, I've got time for a question. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering whether, Philip, you're able to comment in para 41 of the submission. It states, for example, Mapua has issues with drinking water, quality and quantity, and available capacity for new homes. I actually thought that there wasn't a quality issue with respect to Mapua drinking water. So are you able to provide any more information on that point?
That was advice received from Mr. and Mrs. Talley's engineering consultant. So I haven't got specific detail on the quality side of things. I think there's certainly some challenges around upgrading and extending infrastructure to supply development in that area. But yeah, in terms of specifically relating to quality, I can't give you an answer, sorry.
Councillor Dakey.
I thought you talk about the plan being an integrated approach, which is a good thing. And, you know, the plan sets out to inform future changes, zoning, infrastructure for the area. My question is about your submission. Do you feel that you're slightly ahead of the gun here, that the extra details that your client wishes to see are actually, in fact, coming in the next stages? So do you feel that, looking at other plans that you've looked at, other master plans, do you feel that we are going with less information than required, or do you feel that perhaps you know, the extra information that the community needs and your client needs are just coming in the next stages of the process?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. I think from my experience across the country, I've seen examples where master planning has been done where that evidence development has occurred very early on. And I think the logic behind that, which I support, is that if you're going to be doing integrated planning, then understanding what those constraints might do to key parts of your integrated development is essential. Otherwise, when those later processes come through and the information's found and it creates problems, then your whole master plan potentially gets unstitched. I've been involved in processes from a submission point of view where that work has been not done well, and exactly the situation has happened that when the plan changes come through, they've found large holes in the analysis, and that's caused major disruption to how those roll out. So the better and earlier the information, the better, particularly where you've got some of those key constraints, would be my advice.
Okay, thanks for that. So that's our question. So thanks, Philip. Thank you for coming in today, and it was a very detailed submission.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Right. We'll now move to Sonia Mitchell, and that's again on Zoom. So let's just have a look. I think I can see you on the screen, Sonia. I can't hear you, so can you try unmuting, see if that works?
Can you hear me now?
I can. So
Yep.
I think you've been listening the last little bit. So you get 5 minutes. We'll give you a bell at 4. Thank you very much.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa ko huhu mai I tēnei ahi kei te tuku te mihi te uri nei o Ngāti Toa o Ngāti Pakeha hoki ki ngā mana whenua katoa o te rohi nei o te tauihu. For Sonia Mitchell toko ingoa. My name is Sonia Mitchell. I live in Otipoti, Dunedin. I have family who live in Mapua and I have multi-generational connection with Mapua. While I thank council staff and councillors for their work on the Mapua Master Plan, I oppose the draft Master Plan and request that it be rejected. It should be paused to allow for the creation of a new draft that meaningfully responds to the feedback received and properly reflects and balances the principles identified. The current draft doesn't do that. Mapua must not be made to absorb disproportionate and unsustainable regional population growth. I oppose a new greenfield development until all options and a compelling case for why they are needed is provided. The master plan doesn't provide that case. The plan would benefit from greater attention to and public transparency about Mapua's many contaminated hail sites. I would like to see the Mapua Master Plan developed in a way that far better supports and preferably enhances the Waimea Inlet Strategy and Action Plan. The current Master Plan explicitly accommodates a resource consent for a giant boat ramp on Mapua Waterfront Park and a boat trailer park on Kite Park, despite that resource consent not yet having been granted. That development would significantly increase power boating and jet skis in the nationally significant and fragile Waimea estuary, negatively affecting bird life and fish breeding grounds, as well as disturbing people's peaceful enjoyment of the estuary. I oppose the proposal to amalgamate the existing Mapua Waterfront Park into Kite Park and turn them into a single reserve. Mapua Waterfront Park must be kept as a distinct entity for the full enjoyment of the full public. Kite Park was created for a different purpose and the full range of options for this park, and not just the option that happens to align with the council's financial conflict of interest, i.e. a boat trailer car park, needs to be openly and publicly discussed, with council's financial conflict of interest openly acknowledged. From what I've heard, far fewer people would have supported question 1 in the submission form and action 13 in the master plan had they been aware of council's intended use of the so-called open space reserve. I note this comment from page 97 of the supporting information, which many people have told me they didn't get to read before submitting. The master plan takes into account the resource consent application currently lodged with council for a boat ramp. It goes on to talk about how the plan is consistent with the boat ramp application, and that this is also aligns with community feedback around providing for more parking at the waterfront area. I disagree that what is proposed aligns with the community feedback about having more parking at the waterfront area. Allowing significant boat trailer parking, if the Mapua boat ramp resource consent is granted, will mean that there is not much, if any, parking space available for the general public. Meanwhile, half of Mapua Waterfront Park would be overrun with large vehicles towing large powerboats and jet skis. Mapua Waterfront Park has a unique history and location overlooking Waimea Inlet and next to the wharf. It was really hard fought for by the community and by the public of New Zealand, and it must be maintained for our shared benefit. We in the community have ideas for improving Mapua Waterfront Park, including greater recognition of mana whenua, more plantings, shade cloths and picnic blankets, and having a children's play area. And we're really frustrated that these have not been fully explored as part of the work on this plan, and indeed have been put on hold by the Mapua Boat Ramp Trust's application for a boat ramp. Similarly, there appears to be a lack of consideration of the full range of options for Kite Park, and I noticed Renee spoke to some of those. I'd like to see Friends of Mapua Waterfront Park have the opportunity to explore our vision for Mapua Waterfront Park and Kite Park with Council. I believe Council should openly acknowledge its financial conflict of interest with regards to the proposed boat ramp and boat trailer park, including in relation to the master plan, and stop planning in a way that is consistent with a resource consent that hasn't even yet been granted. Council needs to start demonstrating that it is listening to people who have an alternative vision for this important public land. Kia ora. Happy to take questions.
We've got time for one question. If anybody's got any questions of Sonia? No, we've not. So thank you for taking the time to make a submission, and thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is, that's the last of our submitters. I was going to let Dwayne answer some criticism of him this morning. And then what I intend to do is see if there is any more information that councillors require that isn't in the thing. So, Dwayne, over to you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to touch on criticism Henk levelled at me since it was made in public. I'll give you some context to the issue. In the preceding stages to the Mapua master plan process, we talked about the wetland and Seton Valley and things like that. And it was mainly in relation to 49 Stafford Drive, but the concern that Melanie and Henk had was that it was kind of wrapping up their property and people were starting to perceive their property as a wetland. So that's what I committed to apologising for the previous confusion, and I in fact did so when the Mapua master plan draft was adopted in this chamber publicly. And I think I should just restate that just so it's on the record. I apologise to them for any previous confusion before the draft was circulated. We also committed to making sure that we're clearer in the draft that we were talking about a future wetland, and we did follow through on that as well. So I just wanted to make that clear to everybody. In addition to any other thing that they said, we did try to faithfully follow through on those commitments to them. Otherwise, we're really happy to hear about things you want to make sure that we cover up in the deliberations report.
So if you look at the submissions we've seen, they are from one end of the spectrum over here to the other end right across here. So it's very wide because we've heard from developers, we've heard from people that don't want any development at all, in fact want to shut the gate. So is there any more information that councillors require Anna to put in her deliberations report? So anything you've heard today? So Councillor Dowler, you've got something you require?
Yeah, just a comment, and one of the submitters was the Network Tasman power supply. So I think we need to get that brought to the table to see exactly what.
Councillor McKenzie had some information about that. She related to me this morning. But, I'm sorry, my understanding of Councillor McKenzie, could you relate and know who we?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's not appropriate for me to relate.
So we could ask Network Tasman.
We could, yes.
Because my understanding is there is enough power, but we will ask the appropriate people that question. So if you could note that, Dwayne or Anna. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. I do have a number of points. I just want to run through them that would help me, and whether they're in the deliberation report or these things may already have been done, but it might help me if you could point me to where they are. So I know that, in the last few days, we've had some statements from the coalition government about changes to the Resource Management Act and what that might mean. So for me, I think it would be useful to understand where we currently sit within our planning processes and timeframes. Because as we know, the master plan is, was to be an input for future zone changes. So I'd just like to understand how all that fits together. I think a number of the submitters, they remain unconvinced about the data that we've used for our growth forecasts and what those growth forecasts actually mean. So I'd quite like to be pointed back to where that information is so I can get that locked into my head. I'd like to understand what our process is for actually responding to all the points that have been made in the submissions. Like, I'm not clear in my mind how that process is going to work for people to get their individual responses. I would like some thought given to the issue that was raised by the submitter around some alternative dog walking facilities for the protection of our birds. I feel as though we are kind of left hanging with, you know, quite a severe impact on some threatened species. I am mindful of several submitters who have raised issues around the geographic polygon of the master plan, and you know, this site's just out of it, or this site's just out of it. So just understanding how we drew the polygon where we did, and the impacts of that would be helpful. One of the submitters, Jan, he raised a point in his PowerPoint slide around some inconsistencies with regards to the land development manual, and that we had made an incorrect thing in our master plan. So I'd like to get that clarified. I'd like to understand a little bit more around, and I think we may have covered this in some meeting, like we have a different approach with our hail sites data than Nelson City does. So if you read the submissions, they basically say you can go to top of the south maps of Nelson City and you can get all the information on hail sites, but it's all cut off when you come to Tasman. So that is something that I would like to understand a little bit more. So they're just the things off the top of my head.
All right, thank you. I think some of those relatively simple to answer. Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, Through the Chair. Just in regards to the commercial land around Mapua Drive, Stephen Valley Road, Stafford Drive, just around the cluster there of that commercial zone, as much detail as is available for the background on why those decisions, indicative places were marked. So around flooding models and everything, the more detail that I can see around those various properties would be useful. And the other one is for the indicative walkways marked through properties. I would be interested in seeing if there is a option B around the outside or such. So those are my 2 points. Thank you.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor Kininmonth.
Thanks. Just in relation to the catchment management plan, and I think there's
Second point.
Yeah, so just around the there was quite a few submissions actually questioned the completeness of the catchment management plan and management of sea level rise, management of stormwater. And so I'd like to see not necessarily a more detailed catchment management plan, but just an explanation of if it is just a limited one at this stage, and just saying whether or not this is going to come out later on, or whether or not that's what you're working on.
Right. Councillor Kininmonth.
Thank you, through Mr. Chairman. Councillor McKenzie has covered off a lot of my questions I've got, but I'm a bit concerned. At the very beginning today, we had a submission from the owner of 12 Seton Valley Road, something about a forest and some vegetation, and it wasn't there. That wasn't on the plan, and he also made a comment that he hadn't been able to discuss it with anybody. So, if we could get a resolution to his issues, and also the native exotic forest that wasn't on the master plan.
Right. Deputy Mayor Bryant, sorry.
So 2 or 3 things from myself who have known for years, Jim. Firstly, and a drain just around the medium high density residential living. Just if we're proposing that, where and how, and likely demand. and how we judge that's going to be a really challenging question. The other thing from Renee near the end, that he talked about the Queenstown Lakes model for cheaper housing. I've actually seen some of that, and we would do if we could investigate that a bit further. I'm not sure it's inclusionary housing or the developer has to give a house, but we might be able to clarify that, but it's certainly worth pursuing. And then thirdly, just in relation to the kite park, or we are the guy from Trevor Marshall talked about the
Trevor Marshall on the
whether that's what would be the appropriate zoning there, whether that's open space or recreational, commercial, and what we do with that in the longer term.
Yeah, John's just going to respond quickly to one of Christine's points.
Just on the RMA reforms, so you'll be aware that the blueprint was released publicly yesterday. I think we've been party to it probably for about 2 weeks, but we're still trying to get under the skin of, because the devil's in the detail. So I talked to Marion about at some point giving a bit of a briefing into council as to what this could mean for us. So as part of this, I don't know if we're going to have enough. Depends where you want to go with the questioning, but we can give you an overview in terms of our view as to where it's leading us. I don't know if it will give you maybe the comfort you need in this process.
I guess to explain what I'm trying to get my head around is that if we're going down a certain path and suddenly over here it's going to be a new road over here, and suddenly this is completely inconsistent with that, should we consider going down this path?
There's no guarantee it'll get through Parliament yet. They've certainly, everything's taking a lot longer than what they thought. That's a part of our struggle. And it's affecting us in a lot of the stuff that we do. But it's a very good question. All right, so those are all the questions. Joe, you've got another one?
Thank you. Your questions covered a lot though. Sorry?
Could have said Councillor Ellis.
Not worried. I'm just wanting, possibly if it comes through any consenting processes, but the issues raised around sedimentation and chemicals and how it's coming into the estuary. Yeah, I know, but
that's in the Nelson Tasman Development Manual, because I had to look it up last week. It's in the sedimentation that already covered within our hand.
And also just some of the stuff that was raised in the submission by the landowners, Drewery, there's a bit of history there, and I'm still struggling to work out how it's all fitting together because of getting portions of two sides of a story. So maybe some further explanation around there, but you don't really want a lot of that in the public arena, so I'm not quite sure how we could get further information on that without interfering with people's privacy, but I'm still feeling uncomfortable about how that's working out and just trying to get a sense of what the story is. Thank you.
Okay, so there's quite a number of questions now. Deliberations are scheduled for 9:30 a.m. on Monday, the 28th of April, 2025. Anna, will we be able to get the report at least 7 days before that? Because when I look at the amount of reading that was in this, I'm sure your report will not be that short.
Yes, I'm hoping you would be able to get it that far in advance. Yeah.
I think you need 7 days to be able to read it and consider it. Would Wayne?
Through this year, I guess it's there's 130 submissions, some of which are 30 pages, a lot of staff advice to compile. I'm just conscious with some of the staff are also engaged in the plan change process, the annual plan and the local water done well discussion you're about to have. So I guess if the committee was okay, we'll have to, in about 2 or 3 weeks, just track how we're compiling that information, and there's a possibility deliberations might be pushed out a week or two. But that's the intention, to give you the information properly. Yeah.
Me, it's been properly. Give us time. So to me, it's about doing the job once and trying to do it right, rather than rushing it. So if you need more time, you just let us know through the mail. I think that there's a consensus I'm hearing around the table. So if that's everything, first of all, I want to thank all the work that Anna has done and the staff today. Huge amount of work to compile all this, and the consultation process and all those things that we had at Mapua, and there was lots of them, and they were very well attended. It's a very engaged community, isn't it? And challenging, but that's the nature of it. So Councillor Butler is going to close the meeting with Karakia. Thank councillors for all your attention today. We've good turnout and some good questions.
Okay. Kia hiki te kōrero, kia wātia, kia mama, te manawa o te tangata, kia uki te ara mō tātou e ora nei, ko rongo, ki ronga, kia tine, huye, taike.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll see you tomorrow morning.